Hey there, everybody. We are here. We are back, all four of us, back on our usual time of Wednesday. And, well, we have a lot to say as usual. There is a lot to compare to the books here. It's difficult sometimes to tell how the books relate to the show, especially as we get farther along and the divergences grow. But there's always things that we can relate to the books to see if there's connections. For example, this episode, there's a lot of things that we can relate to the books that may or may not actually end up relating to the books, but some of these things absolutely raise topics that are important for us to consider within the book context. A lot of the stuff happening beyond the wall is a perfect example of that. But we're going to start with a little bit of a roundtable, getting our complaints off our chest, because it's important to vent. It's important to, say what we feel before we dive into with a full analysis, because there are a lot of issues with this episode. There are a lot of things to say that aren't positive, but we don't want to sit here for 2 hours and complain either. So let's start off with, venting and saying all the things that we didn't like or that we flat out hated. And then we'll go into the analysis where it's more about figuring out what happened and figuring out what the books say about all this and where things may tie together. And so we can all hang out and have a good time. Because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. We're here to have a good time. No one wants us to complain for 2 hours. But at the same time, there's plenty of negative things we have to say about this episode. So we got to do both. So who wants to start? Ashea, Lady Gwyn, Yoke Boy, who wants to vent first? Who wants to let him have it?
I'll go.
All right.
I'll dive in. I want to start out by naming pros for this episode, because I did find a lot of great things. As usual, the music and the sound design. I listened to this episode on headset. The sound is amazing. Costuming was always really great, as usual. The CGI, the general spectacle. This is what they excel at, and this was no disappointment in all those areas. Cons, general storytelling, the pacing, which is something we've talked about a lot this season. It just doesn't feel right. It's resulted in kind of rushed storylines. Character development, these are things that I feel like have grown weaker as the season progresses, and it's all kind of starts with the pacing. I think we're starting to see the problem of showrunners writing backwards, meaning that they're trying to get to a specific endpoint and just fill in the gap between where the source material leads off and what the end is. And they just have a little restricted space, and it's resulting in this kind of off-kilter feel. Overall, I would give it a 6.5, which is the lowest I've ever given an episode. Especially a penultimate episode. I would have expected a much higher rating.
Yeah, it's definitely my least favorite of the season, too. I'm not sure what I would rate it. I haven't given it that kind of thought, but absolutely give it a drop-off. Now, just to balance this out, another thing, something that Shay and I did right before recording, was we watched the behind-the-scenes on filming that battle. And that always helps a little bit with any frustration I have. Because, man, when you see how much effort they go into making these scenes, it's really just crazy. They literally hollowed out a quarry, flattened a quarry with concrete, and then froze water on top of it to make the frozen lake stuff. And then they had explosives for the dragon fire. And then they had things, really funny things, like you see Thoros, Paul Kaye, the actor, wrestling with just like a metal cage that's like the size of a small brazier, and that's not a bra, but one of those things you burn small coals in. And he's wrestling with this little contraption, and that's supposed to be the undead bear. And it's just really kind of funny to see that behind the scenes. Who wants to go next with their venting?
Yoke Boy.
Yeah, I'll go for it.
I don't have venting written out. I just have the things I want to bring up throughout the episode.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I would agree with a lot of what Lady Gwyn was saying. It starts with the pacing, and it's kind of had a knock-on effect where other parts of the basic kind of tenets of storytelling are getting affected, like the characterization, plot motives, and tension all feel a bit off. I thought there was a touch of self-parody about the action scenes, which for me isn't really a good sign. And there's a headline from the UK press said best show on TV becomes the silliest, and I read that and I kind of agreed, and it was kind of sad that this show that's done so much for fantasy and reinventing this genre that had become quite unfashionable, and this feeling that, again, that it's silly. It's kind of where fantasy started. So I felt a bit sad, but the story's not over. I'm sure there'll be better episodes, but as a penultimate episode, I felt pretty disappointed.
Yeah, certainly unusual I think this is probably the most complaining and criticizing, valid, all of it for the most part. Not all of it. Certainly there's always nitpicks that I don't agree with, but there's always plenty that I do. And this is one of those cases where you usually don't have as much nitpick in a penultimate episode. There's usually more positivity about it because it is usually better. And one thing I particularly agree with Lady Gwen is the pacing. The thing is, all these seasons have built up so many fun things, and this is supposed to be payoff, right? And a lot of it has been. A lot of this season, we've gotten a lot of really awesome payoff, like a lot of nostalgia, a lot of meaningful moments. But when you rush through it, it just kind of, it's like, hey, we've been waiting for these payoffs.
Yeah, and I think
why are we rushing past them?
Yeah, and I think they're rushing through it after having taken their time for seasons and seasons and seasons, whereas if they'd been going at a closer pace to this earlier on, it wouldn't feel so off to me personally, but it really does feel, it goes down to things like travel time. In previous seasons, it took a while to travel for most people, and so it feels wrong and off to a lot of viewers when they just throw that out the window.
And it usually wasn't to advance the plot. The time stuff was always more forgivable because it usually didn't matter. It wasn't like Varys going back and forth to Essos really quickly wasn't like key to the action that followed it. It wasn't a Deus Ex Machina where it kind of is here because the timing is they have to mess with the timing to get that scene to work. Whereas in the past, you could kind of explain it away. It's like, oh, Varys going back and forth. It's not like anything happened. It's not like this and that. But here, it's like they're relying on the fact that the timeline doesn't work. And then they came out and admitted that the timeline doesn't work.
Yeah, they said it's fuzzy, and they just worked with that, which isn't great to hear, honestly, when the director says that sort of thing.
Yeah. And nothing is likely to change about that. They're definitely appealing to a wider audience than us, and they're not going to listen to us. They're not going to listen to our complaints.
He said that in the article.
Yeah, right. And I don't, on some level, I don't blame him, but it also upsets me. And it's like I wish we would have, but I also am like, well,
Yeah, if there were 16 million people watching, what are rabid fans like us? Maybe 1 million of that, maybe. So it makes sense, as much as we've talked about this in the past, that often shows, and Game of Thrones in particular, can appeal to the lowest common denominator of fan because it's already very hard material for a lot of casual fans to understand. They don't know characters' names and stuff like that. So
I noticed that a few different friends of mine, more than one person in Facebook this week, has asked, have you all, like, people who haven't read the books, do you know who Jon Snow's parents are? And a lot of people didn't. Like, a lot of people didn't, which just goes to show not only that this hasn't been super well communicated, but that it just goes to show how hard it is for them to communicate things to the casual fans. And that just kind of, it's a problem for them as showrunners. Like, well, how do we balance being true to the material that they don't actually have? They have George's story points. I'm sure he told them a lot of these things. And some of them they used, some of them they invented. And it's difficult to tell what's what. But some of it is just, well, yeah, we can't sit down with HBO executives and say, yeah, we're catering to the book fans. They'd be like, why? Why are you doing that? But there's a balance. So it's got to fall somewhere in between. And I don't know how well they've actually done that. Who knows? We weren't part of their discussions.
Anyways, we got a super chat from Alex M. The accelerated plotline is the biggest issue. We would have at least known something about the Night's Watch brothers that died on the lake in episode 6, but the plotline is moving at such a relentless pace. And I agree with it. Those people meant nothing to anyone. We barely saw them at all. We hardly knew how many were even with them.
Yeah, it seems like it was 5 because they kept referring to 12 in the behind the scenes, as if there were 12 of them. So I guess there were 5, nameless wildlings. And one of them had some lines in the behind the scenes. The guy who does the trust fall, he falls off the back of the rock into, Jon tries to grab him and he falls backwards into the whites. That was a real trust fall. The actor whites all caught him. But yeah, so he had lines in the behind the scenes, but during I have no idea who that guy was, though.
And for me, it really was in stark contrast to, think of Hard Home with Carsey, where they did so much with so little and made us care so much about her character that it meant something when she died. And so to see that they were capable of doing that and then they weren't able to do that for this episode makes me all the more disappointed, honestly.
Yeah.
Another super chat.
Hey, from
Sandrixian, who has some great shirts out there.
Yes,
if you look up her Twitter. She says, I'm at work and can't watch this all live, so I thought I'd just send love. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, we send love back.
But I guess we should move on.
Yeah,
we'll certainly have more to say about all of this as we go forward.
So like I said at the beginning, what we do when we are faced with an episode that we didn't love, we have other things to do. One of the things I take on as like a personal task, and we all kind of, I think, can agree, it's better when we're having fun. So my goal here is to bring up things that relate to this episode that we can talk about like a book topic. So we have more quotes than usual today. We're going to talk a lot about the nature of the others and the whites, dragon glass, the concept of an ice dragon. There's a lot of foreshadowing for that in the books. Even if it plays out a lot differently, this isn't exactly out of nowhere. So let's do that. But first, looks like we have another super chat.
Yeah, we do. From Lady Lazarazo.
Oh, hey there.
She said, we have to suspend disbelief and be done. D&D have no choice. This is a convoluted story with a ton of moving parts. The sheer glee the show has given is worth it. I think we should be kissing the showrunners' collective ass. Well, it is thanks to them that we have a show.
Yes.
It is true.
I disagree with that one.
I will say... you go ahead, Yoko, yeah.
I think if it had been, the kind of time issue and that kind of thing, then yeah, suspend your disbelief. But I think we pointed to deeper problems in the kind of characterization that really affects the enjoyment of the show. Whether you're a book expert or not, you should be concerned about the characterization and the arcs, because for me that's what brought me to the show and the books.
I'll say that in terms of kissing their asses, I have a bit of bitterness because they're clearly just done. Like, they're just tired of making the show, and I don't exactly blame them because it's a very difficult show to create. It's 365 days a year. It is their jobs, and they have families. But you could pass the reins on to a different showrunner. You could add another showrunner. There's other options besides just rushing through the material, and I can't exactly be grateful for them when I think they're rushing through things that shouldn't be rushed through.
Yeah, but I absolutely agree that she's right, that there is a lot to be thankful for. This community exists in large part because of the show. Certainly the books are what made it all begin, but the community grew to many times its original small size because of that, because of the show. It brought a lot of people to the books. That's one thing I'll never forget. I'll always be thankful for that, no matter how much they mess up my perceptions of what I think the material should be. That's always something I will be thankful for. So I think that's
can I add that it's perfectly fine to have different opinions on the show as well, and I totally respect anyone that likes it, or this isn't a kind of personal bitch fest. It's like like Aziz said, we're here to kind of analyze and have fun, and I think if people really enjoyed it, we really don't want to bum them out, man. I really enjoyed some of this show, this episode, just not all of it, that's all.
Yeah, that's another thing about Game of Thrones, is that very often, sometimes episodes are divisive because people hated one scene, but other people didn't really mind that scene and loved a different scene. And these two scenes aren't connected to each other at all. So people are like judging one aspect of it while someone else is judging a different aspect of it. And those two things don't really meet because some people loved the one storyline and hated another, but some people didn't care about that first storyline in the first place. So the fact that it's messed up, they don't, maybe they'd already given up on that. Some people gave up on Arya long ago, like they ruined Arya back in season 5. I don't, this is just an extension of that. So I can kind of see where some people are coming from in that regard. We need to announce about the party thing, unfortunately.
Yes, we had gotten a super chat from Lady Zara as well, saying she was excited for Sunday. to see us, but we're not going to New York after all. It should still be happening at a different venue, but it was just too last minute for us, as it turned out, for us to book our flights and all that.
The Bell House canceled. The original venue we were supposed to be at canceled us.
Just because their internet speed, to be clear,
yeah,
it wasn't anything.
It was a pretty sketchy reason, and it was very last minute. Zach and Haley from the Manimals are still going to have a party. They are deciding on a venue today, so I hope that y'all in the New York area will still go, because it will be a really fun time. But it's become too expensive for us, and we can't justify the cost. So,
but we'll be at Dragon Con here in Atlanta next week. If anyone wants to say hi, send us an email or something.
So we're bummed out that we're not going, but y'all should still go and support Game of Bones and this effort, because I imagine it'll still be a blast even without us. We also have a super chat from
from Alexander Wilson. What's your opinion on Alan Taylor saying that George R. R. Martin told them that Jon and Dany meeting is the point of the story? I would say he said Jon and Dany is the point of the story, not the meeting necessarily. And I'd say any book reader really knew that, but obviously directors in season 1 didn't know that. Like he said in the article, this is just some bastard, who would think that he is the main character really of the show at that point. And so that was awesome.
Alan Taylor said, I thought it was about Rob and Ned. That was back in season 1.
Yeah, that's what he said. That was so funny.
So
well done, George.
I do think that's pretty interesting. Of course we got to take this comment with a grain of salt because it's secondhand. Maybe George didn't say it quite that literally. We can't be sure that's exactly how George said it, but it's still a very telling comment. But also, like Ashea says, they do seem like the most Song of Ice and Fire type candidates here, as far as that goes. They seem like the characters that most fit.
Certainly lots of book readers think Bran is on par potentially with them. It's pretty popular, but this says something that he didn't say Bran was.
Back in 1993, George said the 5 characters that he expected to survive till the end were Jon and Dany and Tyrion and Arya and someone else.
Everyone wondering.
Not Sansa, though. It wasn't Sansa.
So, was it Bran?
Yeah, Bran. Yeah, I think it was Bran. Yeah. So but of course that was in 1993. Now, so what George decided back then has absolutely changed since then. So we shouldn't necessarily assume that that's still the case. But it was his original intent, and that's interesting. That is very interesting.
I think we have a few more announcements. We should get through our intro.
Let's do the rest of our announcements. Yes, we're doing a lot of our coverage before the intro today, which is fine. We're doing things that need to be covered. So we have our on lighter news. We have our George R. R. Martin box giveaway still underway. Email westeroshistorygiveaway@gmail.com. Again, that's westeroshistorygiveaway@gmail.com. You will be entered for all the drawings. The drawings happen on Saturday, but we'll let you know if you won, even if you don't make our Saturday Predictions and Theories episode with Sean. And so far we've given one of the boxes out. There'll be 2 more given out this week. They contain a lot of really cool stuff, maps, books. There's a letter. There's Robert Baratheon's will. Well, it's still Rob, right? Yeah. But not Rob Stark's will. And it's just really good stuff. They retail for $75 for the smaller box and $250 for the bigger one. And like I said, just enter.
Yeah, we've gotten like 700 giveaway entries so far, so not that many, so you have a shot.
You definitely have a shot, so get in there if you feel inclined, and you might be one of the lucky ones. And you don't have to enter multiple times. Enter once, and you'll be entered for all the drawings. Mm-hmm. And also want to give thanks to our patrons. We have had a nice surge on Patreon this season. We're very thankful for that. It enables us, partly it's why we started doing the Saturday episodes. Got more time, got more interest, and so we put out more content, and that tends to be how things work. So thanks to Jeff Gnarly, the Long Snapper, History of Westeros' first sword. Thanks also to Lord Mark of House Joseph, the Snow and Winterfell, rider of Mazla Cartho, a white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons, also helping us out with the chat modery today. Thanks very much for that. Telenis the Talon is King of Gagassos, rider of Telarius, red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of Midnight Black. And Jinx of House Lier, Green Queen of the Rainwood, rider of Erogenia, an albino dragon with a sylphic albino dragon with amethyst eyes and opalescent wings. Yes, yes. Also, thanks to Radio Westeros' patrons. I know some of them have sent some questions in as well, and that's great. We love having this community experience of both of our podcasts coming together. Even when the show is not doing very well, we still have a great time chatting with you guys, and I'm thankful to your patrons for making your show a professional engagement for you all, because that's enables you to focus on it, which is great because we love your content. And as well, if you are a Radio Westeros patron and you want to get access to the Q&A portion of this episode, what we've been doing is, since these live streams run really long, we take the Q&A portion and cut it and publish it separately on Patreon for any patrons. If you're a Radio Westeros patron and you want that, just get in contact with either us or Radio Westeros, and we'll give you access to that behind the scenes because you deserve it, if you are so inclined. Okay, so that's all of the announcements. Let's get into the regular bit of the material. So let's start with Winterfell. Let's do that. Winterfell is... Yeah,
we've got this scene with Arya and Sansa here. That's really, what we start out with. And we'd wondered a lot last week about what could be going on. I know you speculated a lot in particular about that. We got a super chat. I guess we'll stop this. From the Merchant Prince. Hi all. Thanks for the shout out last week. Just my 2 cents. I think y'all are usually pretty positive about the show, so don't feel bad being more critical this time around.
Right.
It's true.
Thanks
it's true. You know, when the show's done brilliant things, I've given 10 out of 10s for episodes. You know, I wouldn't do that with any other show on TV, I don't think. So that says something, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think so too.
So in this Arya Sansa scene, we get this archery at night anecdote, and I wanted to highlight this idea that I saw brought up a few times in our chat on Monday, which is the idea that this could be foreshadowing. Arya could use this archery skill in some way. We haven't seen whether her skills are still good now, but she certainly practiced for a while, and she's good at practicing her, combat skills, and having good archers with, dragonglass arrowheads could be very useful. So I will be looking out for her doing that.
Yeah, I thought this was the most interesting part of the Arya Sansa interactions. This anecdote about Ned, watching her at night was really good. It started off, this part of the episode started off really well. And then the Arya Sansa stuff it started to go a little off the rails maybe a little bit. But, I have mixed feelings about it because there's just, Sansa and Arya have never gotten along. So to me, the idea of them not getting along makes sense. It doesn't mean it has to go that way, but this is more than just not getting along.
Yeah, it is more.
This isn't just sibling rivalry or sibling squabbles. This isn't just them having different personalities. And they do have very different personalities, but this is more than that.
And it does kind of go against some of what we've gotten from the books. You had some great stuff about that, Lady Gwyn.
I agree with a lot of what you both said so far. I think in the books, though, we have lines like Arya thinking, when she thought of seeing Rob's face again, Arya had to bite her lip. I want to see Jon, too, and Bran, and Rickon, and Mother. Even Sansa, I'll kiss her and beg her pardons like a proper lady. She'll like that. It's very sweet, kind of. That's early. That's from Clash of Kings, so it's before she goes to Bravos and everything. But I think they continue to think about each other in ways that show that they miss each other. And it really, in my feeling on the books, is that this sort of thing just maintains the hope that one day these sisters are going to reconnect, which is what I thought we had going on this season. So, we started with this, which is my most negative sort of storyline of the episode. My feelings are the most negative towards this one. So I don't mean to be all negative, but I have to say that I'm just disappointed that this storyline for these two sisters being reunited has basically degenerated into a bitch fest. It just feels like worse than regression. Like you said, Aziz, worse than sibling rivalry and what they, the sort of arguments they used to have. If there's some secret plotting that's going on, and this is really all just a tension device to build up to Sansa taking Littlefinger down, I still think that it's all at a terrible cost, and it really does a disservice to the arcs that these two sisters have been on, and the possibility of them reconnecting. My fear is that the showrunners have completely missed an opportunity to rise above stereotypes about women and female friendships and show us a real sisterhood storyline, which is being side by side with the other major thread in this episode of, loosely connected brotherhood bonding in the face of danger really was a great opportunity.
It's funny that you bring that up about sisterhood, Lady Gwyn, because the other example we got of sisters that they made into conflict, the Sand Snakes. They were very close. I didn't think about that till you brought this up. That's funny.
And really all they did was bitch each other. Right?
And Lysa and Catelyn, they had a lot of contention there too.
Yeah.
Of course, the thing there with some of these is that's George's baseline. That you can't put that on the showrunners. Catelyn and Lysa not getting along. Yeah. That's straight from the books. And this Arya Sansa stuff, we don't know what George's intent was yet.
Yeah.
It's for all we know, this is what George intended. Maybe not this exact way, but some sort of conflict between Arya and Sansa might be something George told them to do or said he was going to do. But he would carry it out a lot differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for Arya to think that she would be happy to see Sansa again, but we all know that maybe you miss your brother or your mother or something, and when you actually see them, it just goes right back to nitpicking at each other and being, we all have that kind of relationship with someone, I think, where... Yeah.
Yeah, and it's possible, and now, Lady Gwyn, your next bit here, I want to preface by saying... It may not be too late. As much as they're squabbling right now, they haven't gone past the point of no return, and maybe they'll get it together. Maybe we will see some sort of sisterhood arc, some sort of them working together and getting along. It's not too late for that.
I still have hope. I do, actually.
Yes.
I have hope. I have hope too.
When she gave, and I think what we're all talking about is when Arya gave Sansa, at least this is what gave me hope, when she gave her the dagger when they had that sort of confrontation in Arya's room. That was the one thing that gave me hope, that they did not miss all the stuff that's foreshadowed. And we have this beautiful line from Ned talking to Arya back in Game of Thrones. And we know that they've included at least part of this line in episode 7, because we've talked about it. It featured in the preseason trailers, and we haven't seen it yet. So we know that part of this is coming.
Yeah.
But I will read the whole passage because it's really beautiful about the sisters and the family. Let me tell you something about wolves, child. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Summer is the time for squabbles. In winter, we must protect one another, keep each other warm, share our strengths. So if you must, Arya, hate those who would truly do us harm. Septa Mordane is a good woman, and Sansa is your sister. You may be as different as the sun and the moon, but the same blood flows through your hearts. You need her as she needs you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I am hoping that things will be more positive in the future, but I wanted to bring up a couple things. One was I liked Sean's point from our show-only episode about how Arya is likely also still holding on to this Micah and Nymeria betrayal. Even though she doesn't bring it up, I think that she definitely would have that on her mind when she's thinking about Sansa siding with the Lannisters. And I think that this is emphasized by the meat in the background of that shot, which Sean pointed out. I just thought it was a brilliant angle that he looked at.
Yeah.
I was pretty unhappy with the scene overall, despite I thought their acting was great. I've seen a lot of complaints about it. Maybe I liked it personally. Arya, just her teary-eyed look was really emotional to me. But when they bring up this scene with Ned's death, I think it's worth noting that Arya did see Sansa start to struggle. I went back and looked. She saw Arya start to struggle and protest and have to be held back by the Kingsguard just before Arya herself sprung into action.
And Yoren kept her, yeah.
And so I'm not surprised at all that Arya would remember the bitterest aspect, because it was such a traumatic experience that was so long ago, she wouldn't remember everything clearly. But Arya did try to run to the rescue, and Sansa didn't just stand there. So there's that. But there was one line in particular that I also really liked, which was, "You never would have survived what I survived. I guess we'll never know." Now, this is a very common thought in the fandom. I can't tell you how many different articles and essays I've read about this very thought, about that they could not have switched places. So that was great.
That's a good point. Yeah, imagine Arya going through what Sansa went through, like trying to pretend to be courtly and just like keeping it all together and just like biding her time. Or imagine Sansa like at the House of Black and White. That's just, talk about fish out of water. Those both are kind of hard to imagine.
Super chat from Lady Ross Tarkian. Because I love Ash's jacket. Queensguard. Awesome. Thank
right
you
on.
for that.
Yes, a Shay's jacket is
I also
awesome.
want to bring up, someone pointed out something that I saw very funny memes about, which was Arya saying she would die before serving the Lannisters, which is a lie. She served Tywin at Harrenhal.
Yeah, brought him his food and everything.
Yeah, but I like the idea that Arya knew that was a lie, that she was playing the lying game with her. That maybe that wasn't just a mistake or anything.
Oh, clever,
Yes.
clever.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. What did you think about this, Yoke Boy?
Okay, Arya and Sansa. I rewatched it just before, so I was watching Arya and kind of her cold demeanor, and she stands with her arms behind her back now, and she's got this penchant for cutting off people's faces. It really reminded me of Hannibal Lecter. I don't know. That can't be good, right?
No.
I think her kind of new persona is disappointing me because I understand, what the trauma she's been through, and maybe they're, depicting this kind of dark soul that she's come to have. But, I really like the notion of her kind of healing and rehumanizing as we thought. Remember when she was at the crossroads and she heard about her family and you saw a spark of humanity in her eye, and now she's kind of like acting like a bit of a psycho. So, it is a little bit disappointing. And like we all were saying, we hope by the end of season 8 that she could rehumanize and could make these connections and shed her kind of dark heart, I think.
Yeah, and there's also something sorry, go ahead. You weren't done.
No, go on.
I was going to say that it's interesting to consider if you think about Arya's point of view and things that Arya doesn't even know yet, and how it would make things a lot worse between them if she did. Consider the thing that a lot of us were wondering about last year, which is that Sansa never told Jon about the Vale Knights. If you look at Sansa as someone who is playing a long game, and you look at her as selfish, it's hard to do because a lot of people like Sansa, and it's hard to look at her selfish. If you consider her actions in light of her trying to do what Arya says she's trying to do, which is take the North for herself, it actually fits really well. Her not telling Jon about the Vale Knights, the way she's managing this situation with Arya, and the way she's, just trying to keep everything in line and allow other people to talk about her as a great leader, it almost looks like Sansa's the one who's the bad guy here and that Arya's the good guy. She's just handling it in a really dark way. I think that's an interesting interpretation. I have to think about it more. I don't fully endorse it, but I think it's an interesting idea. And definitely, it's something that people talk a lot about. Like, why didn't Sansa tell Jon about the Vale Knights? And a lot of people just chalked it up to bad writing. And for me, I don't like going there. I don't like just saying, oh, it's bad writing. Sometimes it is just bad writing, but you cannot assume that. It's really hard to assume that, especially at the time. So I'll have to wait and see what Sansa does. Really want to see how she reacts to Jon bending the knee. That's going to be a pretty big deal, and that's also going to be a pretty big deal to Arya. Our co-writer Joe Buckley wrote an essay on Sansa and Arya this week at Tower of the Hand, worth checking out. Something he pointed out that I thought was very astute is that Arya and Sansa are each kind of following in one of their parents' footsteps. That Arya is doing more like how Ned would do. Not the violent threats, but the lack of nuance. Ned was like, no, Stannis is king, and there's no way around that. Ned was, this person has to be executed, doesn't matter, As kind and gentle as Ned was, he's a real stickler for the rules. And that's kind of how Arya is behaving in a lot of ways. And Sansa is kind of trying to keep everyone happy and kind of keep it all together, which is kind of like Catelyn. It's kind of like the mother. So they're kind of both taking after a different one of their parents in a way. In some ways, those comparisons don't work, but in some ways, they work really well. So I like that. I think it's a good thing to think about.
I think Sansa's had one of the most punishing arcs for a female, most brutal, if you think back to what she's been through. And, in TV history, can you name a female whose arc has been, continually brutal to her? And, what we're really still waiting for is a payoff. So, God damn it, I hope there's a payoff for this Sansa arc. My worry is that the payoff comes, but it's not enough to kind of make it worthwhile. It's like you look back and think, well, after all she's been through, it's not enough. But we'll have to wait and see to judge that.
Yeah, I was wondering where Bran was during all this, and I thought it was notable that Sansa and Arya don't involve him in this dispute, at least not on screen. But I have to imagine that they talk to him about some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, I guess he's just so not Bran-like that I wonder if it's just kind of difficult if they just don't want to,
Yeah, I don't know. I have hope that there's something going on there.
I would think Arya wouldn't be creeped out by Bran, but Sansa clearly was creeped out by Bran, so maybe there should be more Arya-Bran interaction.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see what we have in this finale.
Yeah, definitely. We have questions from Greg Phillips sent in ahead. Please discuss how the Arya-Sansa scenes would fit a lot more if their initial meeting in the crypt was more rocky. Yeah, see, that's a great point. Part of the reason this arc has seemed weird is because their initial meeting in the crypt was so positive. And then it went bad for... yes, maybe sketchy reasons. I can see Arya being upset with Sansa not being rougher with those lords, but Sansa has good reasons for doing it the way she did too. And Arya's just so, unnuanced about her positions here. So, but if that initial meeting in the crypt had been, not such a great reunion, if Arya and Sansa started sniping at each other right away, which they almost did, like you shouldn't have left the guards. You need new guards, and then they hugged and it seemed like it was okay. But if that hadn't ended on a positive note, the rest of this would fit, or at least feel better. It would still be awkward, I think, but it would at least be consistent. So I think that's a good point. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that, but I hadn't thought of that, and I thought that was an interesting take.
Yeah, I think that's probably why we're feeling disappointed, because we felt like things were going in a positive direction, and then, all of a sudden, not so much, without little explanation. So.
I see if some people talk about this as like a bolt-on, not Bolton, but like they just needed something for Arya and Sansa to do. So having conflict is a thing, It's like, yeah, maybe that's why they're doing it. Maybe they're just trying to bide their time.
Think about the things you guys were speculating about last week. There's other things for them to learn about. Bran could have a vision of what's going on with Jon. They could be all, worried about Bran, and Bran could be the one to send the letter to Daenerys. There's all sorts of ways that they could have added conflict that wasn't between those two. Obviously, that's what the decision they went with that they thought was best, though. We got a super chat from Mines Guinness. How will Sansa and Arya react to Jon bending the knee?
Thanks, Joey.
I don't think Arya will care. I don't think it matters to her.
I think Arya is going to, because she trusts Jon so much, she'll assume he did it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And she doesn't have anything invested in them being independent or anything like that.
Yeah, she doesn't care about politics much.
She would care if it was to Cersei Lannister.
Yes.
But, she has grudges against people, but she has no connection to Daenerys.
She doesn't know Daenerys from Adam. I mean, she's probably heard of her, and that's about it. I don't think she's ever mentioned her or talked about her. So, I think Arya will back Jon on anything. But Sansa might not, and that might just deepen this divide. And, of course, Littlefinger coming into the picture here is pretty interesting. He's probably going to push for whatever causes the conflict and gives him the chaos that he's looking for, and he wants Sansa to trust him. What do you think about Sansa Littlefinger there, Lady Gwyn?
Well, first of all, what you just said, Sansa trusting Littlefinger, I do not see how she could for a second after, what he's done with her. It just... in terms of story, that just doesn't make any sense to me, that she is trusting him. So that's where also I have a little bit of hope that there's something else going on here. Mm-hmm. In that specific scene, when they were talking, the suggestion that Brienne could help, that she's the reminder that she's honor bound by her vow to Cat to intercede if one of these sisters is planning to harm the other, really stands out to me, as I'm sure it did to you and everybody else. Basically, I thought about it a lot. I think, it's got to be one of two things. It's either he's saying that Brienne could protect Sansa from Arya, which is the obvious, keep her around. She'll protect you in case things go weird with Arya. But there could also be this subtle suggestion that she be sent away in order to clear the way for Sansa to get rid of Arya, which in light of what happens later on is something interesting to consider.
Yeah, so I had the question of, what do you guys think? Do you think Sansa is, whether intentionally or not, doing what Littlefinger intends, or do you think she's sending Brienne away is more against it? What are you guys' gut reaction?
I'm gonna turn to the books, just off of memory, from some of the Elaine chapters, where you get her internal point of view, and she is consciously feeding Littlefinger what she knows he wants to hear, or doing what she knows he wants her to do. But because you have her point of view, that that's not necessarily that she's just doing it for that reason, that she may have other motivations to do that. So.
I think that's probably similar to what I think, that Littlefinger maybe she got the fact that Littlefinger was hinting that she should get rid of Brienne, and so she's doing it, but not because of what he's saying. She's doing it because she wants to put him at ease, to go along with it, and she doesn't think it's a gamble, maybe.
And she does really need someone she trusts to go south as a representative. Like, that's that's true. She didn't just find an excuse to send her south.
I feel like Jon should contact her and be like, I'm your representative, but clearly there's some miscommunication going on.
Yeah, I mean, Cersei's letter came first, I guess, but Jon is bad at communicating.
Yeah, you'd think they would send a letter before they left Eastwatch on that boat or something.
Yes, because clearly they can send messages from there, because we've already seen it. Right. That's what Gendry's whole run was all about, getting a raven sent to Daenerys.
Maybe that's where Gendry is, on his way to Winterfell.
We're going to talk about that later, but I'll mention it now, that notably Davos did bring up that when he was calling Gendry Clovis, that you're just going off to the Winterfell forges. So whether that was the plan at one point, clearly Gendry swore himself to Jon and was tied to him. So he might stick with him, but maybe he's going to Winterfell.
Good old Clovis. Clovis needs to hang out with Cooper and Darnell and all the other. How come they always come up with regular English names to stick into Westeros for these fake names? There's no one named Cooper or Darnell in Westeros, or Clovis even.
Does that mean Brother Ray? That was a fake name. Ray
and Brother Ray.
Yeah, Brother Ray.
There's no shortage of Westerosi names they could pull from. It's always kind of strange.
So there's an interesting theme. Of course, sometimes when the showrunners put bad stuff in, it kind of masks a few of the clever things they do, because we're all a little distracted by the bad stuff. And that's partly on them. But it is, as our, in our role as analyzing the show, we have to look for these things. And one of the cool things here is Arya and Sansa's discussion on anger versus fear. Came up in several places this episode, which I thought was really neat. It was an underlying theme that, maybe was kind of easy to miss, because what happens? They have that conversation. Arya says, I'll choose anger over fear. And then Sansa maybe acts on fear by sending Brienne, and is obviously afraid of Arya, or at least seemingly afraid of Arya. And so she might be acting on fear here. Especially as she expresses a Littlefinger, she's like, I don't even know who she is anymore. And of course, she's terrified of her with the dagger stuff. And also, this comes up again later with Sandor Clegane. He's too afraid to act at the Firebearer. But then when they're just sitting there on the frozen lake, he gets mad. He's just angry that they're sitting there trapped. He's like a trapped rat, or a trapped dog in this case. And he just lashes out and, throws the rock. And so that's kind of an interesting, the combination of anger versus fear as a theme, hidden theme of this episode was pretty cool. I like that. So let us talk a little more about Sansa and Brienne. The comments here, the way Sansa talks to Brienne is pretty rough. I think no one's happy to see Sansa speak to Brienne like this. And it was interesting that she burned the letter after reading it, which I thought maybe was just shows her state of mind. She burns the letter right after being burned by an old letter. So, by Arya finding this old letter. So maybe she's just like, all right, I'm burning everything. I don't want any. Nothing's coming back to haunt me. I'm just burning it all. So, did you guys have any takes on this whole situation? Like Brienne being the representative. I mean, she needs a representative that she trusts, but Brienne isn't exactly.
She's not politically savvy.
Yeah, this isn't. I can see her trusting her, but maybe
she can trust her, and she can trust her to protect herself, and she can trust her to have someone there to watch her back. In Jaime, as she said.
Yes.
So I think there's a few reasons, but no, I think it's a mistake to trust Brienne, politically. But she doesn't have any other choices, really.
Yeah, I don't know who else she could send. She's certainly not going to send Littlefinger. That would be nuts. He might not go either. He'd probably be like, you should send. I'm going to argue against this decision. But also, I mean, she even tried to leave Podrick there, and Sansa was even like, no, don't even do that, which is maybe pushes things towards that whole Sansa might try to get rid of Arya thing, which is, wow, that'd be surprising.
I still tend to think that she's looking out for them, that this is, I'm still being positive about it. I think that things are going to work out here.
Yeah, there's definitely the trailer line is telling.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, so we have a question from Elise. Why would Sansa be invited to King's Landing anyways? The North is already on board, plus Jon would be there already. Well, this might be part of Cersei's game. You know, Cersei maybe doesn't recognize Jon. Maybe she recognizes Sansa only. I'm not sure. It's,
Alex M. Super Chat. Sansa talks to Brienne like Catelyn would. Well, she did send her to King's Landing, just like Catelyn did. There's that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of this whole... Do you think, is this part of Sansa's spiel, saying she doesn't need protection? Was that just a way to get Brienne to stop making this line of dispute? Or do you think Sansa's being naive about needing protection?
I think it's just what she had to say. I don't think she's being naive. But maybe that's me looking on the bright side of things. I don't know.
You know, to me it felt like, you know, that sort of... Actually, it reminded me of... I just realized what it reminded me of when Arya had to chase Nymeria away.
Yeah, that is what
it made me think of. Yeah. It was very much of the like, I'm doing this for your own good, or you know, you really have to go, so I'm going to be really mean and just make you leave.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah, so you know, Brienne clearly doesn't trust Littlefinger, but Sansa's, you know, not. She professes to not be worried about that. She's got her guards, who Brienne also doesn't trust, but you know. She's gonna make her go anyways, so that's kind of how I read it. Although her, you know, it's hard to say. Is this lending credence to Sansa wanting her away so that she can deal with Arya, or is there something else going on?
Yuck boy.
Yeah, I was thinking. I'm really not sure if this is gonna kind of make Sansa the typical damsel in distress that she's kind of always been and has kind of got a bit old now, hasn't it, to be honest? Or is it a kind of device to allow Sansa to move out of that role where, you know, her bodyguard goes and she grows it into, you know, this kind of fully autonomous character that you're really, you know, pining for all this time? Let's pray for the latter.
Yes.
Another interesting catch here by Joe Buckley is that Sansa trusting overmuch in her guards, if that's what she's doing, is a parallel to Ned trusting the City Watch on Littlefinger's behalf, or because of Littlefinger. It's like, because Littlefinger is there, and he might be corrupting the guards, or who knows what he's doing. It's certainly possible. That's a cool catch. I like that.
A couple people have brought up a few times in the chat the idea that Sansa wrote this letter, or it was a fake letter, or Littlefinger did, or there's something going on. I'll say, how would these people know about what's going on in King's Landing? We would have to have had a communication from Jon and company, which is possible off screen, but that's a lot of things happening off screen for them to do that. So I'm pretty, you know, confident that it was a real letter, though I liked the thought that people were questioning even that. The
small chance that it's Littlefinger, I think, is maybe legit, but Littlefinger doesn't want Sansa to leave. Maybe he just knows she wouldn't. But the idea that Sansa wrote it and sent it herself it doesn't work at all, because she burned it. Like, she didn't even show it to anyone else. She doesn't, you know.
She could have just said she got the letter. She didn't have to show anyone it.
Yeah. But that would mean the Maester is complicit in this, too. You know, she got the Maester to lie, which is possible, but that's... It stretches credibility a bit. It's certainly not impossible, but yeah. Let's see here. So, Lady Gwen, you noticed a particular reunion that you're maybe looking forward to, or at least curious about?
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of us are, because let's talk about something fun. Brienne going to King's Landing. Really, it sets up her reunion with Jaime. They mention it right there, but also with Sandor.
Whoa!
There, so,
we're going to have more characters together in one place than we've ever seen.
I'm really disappointed that Tormund isn't going south, not just because I wanted the Brienne reunion with Jaime around too and all that, but because it would have been great to see another wildling reaction to the south like we had with Gilly, which I thought was a great moment that we had before, and this would be Tormund reacting to King's Landing. It would be so funny and great, but really he has something to do at Eastwatch.
Yeah, and another interesting potential reunion here is Tyrion and Podrick. Because since Podrick is going south too, since Sansa didn't want him around, then that sets that potential up, which is cool. And Podrick with Bronn.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so there's a little bit of that. We had a super chat earlier asking if we'll see Ghost again. Well, I really don't think we'll see Ghost this season because Jon is going to King's Landing, and I don't think Jon's going to go back from King's Landing to Winterfell in this episode. So, but I do think we'll see Ghost again in season 8 because there was a shot of Ghost filmed that they cut. So they at least they haven't at least thrown the idea of Ghost out entirely.
Before we move on to the next section, we got a super chat from Daniel Hickey. Arya has always thought very little of Sansa, and Sansa genuinely is considering a power grab. Seems right to me that Arya is in Jon's corner. Well, I think there's no debating that Arya's in Jon's corner.
Yeah, I do think that there's a chance that Sansa's going for a power grab. I'm not sure, I'm not convinced, but it's absolutely a possibility. And, you know, some of her actions do potentially hint that way. And if Arya is as good as reading people as we're being led to believe, then Arya might be reading that in Sansa. We should be believing it because Arya is, had this training, the Lion Game and all that. So maybe that's why Arya feels this way, is because she really does detect this in Sansa. But we'll see. We shall see.
So I think it's time to move on to Dragonstone.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to Dragonstone. I like this line that kicks it off. It's like, do you know what I like about you? I really don't. I honestly don't.
And then they have this chat about heroism and heroes in general, and Dany, we start to get even more hints about Dany's interest in Jon Snow, his interest in her. Dany says he's too little for me, and personally, I'm not a shipper by any sense of the word, really, but I do have a soft spot for Show Tyrion and Daenerys. In the books, I think there's kind of a big age difference, but Show Tyrion and Daenerys, I think have really good chemistry, so for me, this had me grinning a lot more than the Jon Dany scenes, honestly. I just really like them together. I wish that they could be together, but it's clearly Daenerys all the way.
There's a lot of things that point to a different style of government after all this is all said and done. Tyrion is kind of hinting at something else, like, you got to make plans, you got to do the succession, you got to, all these concepts, and the fact that Jon maybe can't have kids, and that Dany almost certainly can't have kids, it means they kind of have to do something else. So maybe it's kind of helping them. All these plot points about Daenerys and Jon and their ability to procreate might be part of pushing them towards another form of government. What did you think about that, Yoke Boy?
Yeah, when I watched it, Aziz, I got the same kind of feeling for a few seconds, I think. And I thought the idea of a new political system might be appealing to Westeros after a kind of almost apocalypse that's inevitable kind of thing. Obviously, an emerging hero from the war would be a prime candidate for, the people's choice. And, the concept could be the writer's statement on positive progression politically, and even part of the sweet in the promised bittersweet ending to the story.
Yeah. We had a super chat. This is kind of a funny one. Let me find it again. It kind of scrolled past us here. Here we go. It says, from Ryan Burns. Thanks, Ryan. People asking, where's Ghost? Did you see Dany's coat? Shay's going to put it on screen in a minute, so you get the full effect.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk about this coat. Let me go down to the notes where I had it. I lost it. Anyways, just that she's got this white furry dress. Obviously, lots of people have made lots of jokes about it. But to me, my first thought is that it doesn't look that warm, really. But a couple of things. Maybe Dany has some hot blood in her. And two, she's riding a dragon. You could imagine that keeps her pretty warm. She doesn't leave the dragon.
It spits fire and warms her.
Yeah, like maybe it wasn't too cold. But I was looking at that compared to all the really bulky furs that everyone else had, and I was like, I don't know if you're prepared for this.
You definitely need some earmuffs, but no one wears helmets or earmuffs if they have a name in this show.
I imagine dragons have got excellent central heating, so.
If you imagine dragons. But also you'll note in this picture of Dany that she's got that little chain that she wears with her 3 dragons on it. How sad would it be if she took one off?
Oh, I'm going to start making her 2.
Yeah, she won't do that.
All the future jewelry will be 2-headed dragons. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone.
Looks like about 500 people watching live right now. Thanks very much for showing up today. It's great that you did. Great that you're here discussing this fun episode with us. Whether the episode itself you thought was fun, the discussion can certainly be fun, and we are having fun right now. So appreciate y'all showing up and joining the group. And hit the like button, please. That helps us get noticed more, and that's always a good thing. So how about this armistice? I'm glad to see Tyrion saying that, I don't trust Cersei. Of course she's going to do something. What it's going to be, I don't know. And, Tyrion thinks he's figured this out, that Cersei's going to do something, but has he figured out that Cersei knows that they know she's going to do something, and thus her plan will be maybe a little extra meta because of that, or something that they can't prevent? I don't know.
Yeah, to me it seems really, really silly to trust Cersei, especially with Tyrion involved, but I have to imagine that he's banking on Jaime's involvement as well, and that's why he's willing to do this. But I don't know. This plotline seems so silly to me.
Yeah, the whole idea of capturing a dead guy to prove anything is a little odd, but I like where it's going in terms of how this has pulled people together and not everybody being in the same location. I think is pretty interesting.
A super chat from Helene May. Can you please discuss the ramifications of Tyrion's advice to Dany if he is also in love with her? Feels like the filmmaking is pointing that way. I've definitely gotten a vibe, but again, I don't know if it's just that I like the two of them together and I think they have good chemistry. But I remember previous seasons when they were sitting together on the steps in Marine, and there was a romantic tone to it. So I do think that, on one side, exactly, that he, how can you not admire and be in love with this amazing badass woman who woke dragons and looks like that? I don't know. Of course he likes her.
Yeah.
It's the Tormund brand of romance.
Yeah,
it's very one-sided.
Yeah, against someone with very blonde hair.
But Ash, you really liked how Tyrion counseled her here.
Yeah, I did. I thought that was some really good advice, specifically for debating. It's true for war as well, but in terms of she's going to be there and she's going to need to make her case to them, he says, you need to take your enemy's side if you're going to see things the way they do. And you need to see things the way they do if you're going to anticipate their actions, respond effectively, and beat them. And that's just a simple, anyone who's studied debate or anything like that will know that you have to know what the counterpoints are going to be.
It's true in battle. Know your enemy. It's perfect. Yeah, it's a perfect analogy. By the way, I think this advice really applies well to reacting to David and Dan's take on the show. You need to take your enemy's side if you're going to see things the way they do. And you need to see things the way they do if you're going to anticipate their actions, respond effectively. Well, not the beat them part. We're not going to beat them, but... and I say that tongue-in-cheek, but it's really true because, the production side of things is really difficult, and we don't know a lot of the things that's going on behind the scenes.
What were you saying, Yokeboy?
I got a question just that I've thought of on the spur of the moment. Do you think Cersei's beyond doing another wildfire trick? Because I think I saw someone on Twitter mention it, and it's just come into my head. Do you think that she could try and kind of, do another version of what she did?
It's possible. I would be down on that idea because they've kind of already gone that route, and it would, I get the logistics are problematic, but that hasn't stopped them before, so maybe that's not a great counter argument. But I would think it's going to be something new, but I'm really just guessing here. I really don't know.
Yeah. Counter argument would be she's clearly present, which in the Sept she was clearly staying away from it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was thinking more of the troops.
Yeah.
Of somehow bringing everybody in, and then the fleet in the bay and the ones.
Yeah, I'm suspicious. I'm most suspicious of the fleet, of Euron's fleet. It seems like the biggest wild card to me but again, the dragons, 2 dragons will be there, so it's quite a gamble for her to do anything because then she'll just get torched, or her army will get torched, or who knows what.
It might have to be what we maybe should be thinking about is possibilities that would forestall that kind of reaction. In other words, what could Cersei do that would cancel their ability to react violently? And maybe the only thing I could think of is taking Dany captive. That's the only thing that would keep the dragons from reacting. Taking Tyrion captive wouldn't do anything. Taking
Yeah, Dany knows what to do when she gets taken captive. She did it with the Dothraki.
Yeah, she'll just summon the dragon. Yeah, so so it's really it's tough to perceive here. I don't even have I don't have a lot of great theories here. It's just it's kind of hard to predict, but I guess we'll have to see.
It's worth remembering that King's Landing, must get torched because of the House of the Undying vision. It seemed torched to me.
That's true. Maybe that's if that's not the White Walkers doing that, then maybe it's
Yeah, which we have to suspect that it's possible, especially because the Night King has a dragon that we don't know if it spits fire or ice or what.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure. But if we go back to the succession issues we got a super chat.
Super chat from Jay Crook. Looks like Euron's fleet is going to be present. Think we will see Yara. Yeah, I do think so.
Yeah, we might see
Yara. I don't know if
Yara.
we'll see her. I think she'll be talked about if we don't see her.
Theon's definitely seems to be part of the group that goes to King's Landing. Maybe he goes elsewhere later or before, or I don't know. But yeah, we've been wondering about Yara. We thought we'd get like a scene to show what's up with that, but I guess it's just general straight up captivity. That's not really. Maybe it isn't very interesting to show that. Still, it'd be nice to know.
It would. Kind of reminds me that one. Which season was it when they had her just kind of dive in for that one like attempted rescue, and then just you never saw anything from her again.
Yeah. Okay, so the let's talk about.
Yeah. Let's go down. Are we at our mid-roll spot?
Yeah, it's
about an hour exactly.
It's about a decent spot for that. Yeah, let's do our mid-roll activity, and then we'll move on to the next location. Throughout the episode, if you guys want us to make predictions on what's going to happen in this final episode, and we normally do that on Saturdays, but this is different because there's so much mystery around episode 7. It's very little of it has been shown in the trailers. Very, very little. Even without saying what those trailers reveal, I can say that it's very little. So we can do a little more predicting this episode than we normally would. We won't talk about specifically what's in the trailer shots, other than things that have been said already that are very basic. But if you guys want us to make a few guesses, that's totally valid this time around, even though we normally shy away from that and save it for Saturday. Okay, so let's give some thanks. I want to give thanks to the History of Westeros Blood Riders, which consists of Kohol Koi, Master of the Bow, called Sunpiercer, and Vorsaki, which means flame, who is the wielder of a Valyrian steel arak with a dragon glass hilt. And that's really cool to have, dragon bone hilts. Very cool. Both of our Blood Riders are female. We feel very well protected by them with their weapons expertise. Also, I want to give thanks to our Ironborn captains, who have been kind of sidelined for the last few episodes, but perhaps they'll be getting back into the action on the TV show this next episode. Thanks to Kathleen the Ruthless, Captain of the Night Terror, motto, don't fall asleep. Black Matos Storm Rider, Captain of the Rusted Hinge. Rebea, Lady of Waves, Captain of the Iron Shadowcat. Tuskshield, Breaker Captain of Kraken's Fury. Oishan the Wanderer, Captain of Naga's Living Flame. Sir Selvus Redblade of White Harbor, Captain of Trident of the North. Lord Chucklaws, Captain of the Drummond Nightblood, Destroyer of Evil. Madzak is Captain of the Red Wake. Heron Burntbeard is Captain of the Smoking Narwhal. John Gregor is Captain of the Fist of the Drowned God. Also, shout out to our Sellsword captains, who I think it was their turn and not the Ironborn captains, but we'll just give them both a shout out today. So that's how we roll. Peter Blaze of the Emerald Isle is Captain of the Werewood Wanderers, to long lives, quick deaths, cold beer, and warm women. Daegron is Marshal of the Axe, Captain of the Red Tide, motto, resistance is futile. Garyon Pike is wielder of Grave Embrace, of Valyrian Steel Axe, Captain of the Iron Wave, Iron's Kiss is eternal. Chiron Callsbane is Captain of the Stone Shields, the torrent breaks upon the stone. Captain Kithik Deadeye of the Scarlet Longbows, pierced by darkness. Care Bouchard, Captain of the Walking Drum, Yul Bosan, may there be a road. Haima Helminth is still Captain of the Whispering Children, while also being Shea's Captain of her Queen's Guard. Let dead men tell, no secrets. Lady Lajara Dajo is Captain of the all-female Wailing Widows, Women and Children First. Castellan of the Summer Island Keep, Arboreal Point. She is Master Archer and nicknamed the Iron Lily. Cody the Crimson is Bastard of Bracken, Captain of the Red Waste Exiles and Recruiter of the Free Folk. And Cameron, the Hammer of Hornwood, is Captain of the English Lions with the motto, Honor is the reward of virtue. We also have another super chat here.
Yes, we do, from the Phoenix of Skane. Mira deserves a good man, like Podrick's her sex god. Do you see any closure for either of the two? No, not really. I don't see any happy ending for either of them, unfortunately. I don't see any love.
I think that would be a good ending, though, don't you? That's a good match.
Yeah, Podrick and Mira, yeah. I think we'll see Mira again next season, is my guess. I think she'll be back, but not this season. And Podrick, we'll at least see him next season, and maybe something comes up that makes this possible. I like this idea. I like this ship.
Is Mira going to come back with Howland, do you think, Aziz?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's my guess because
I think so.
She says she's going to be with her family, and well, we don't know her mother's name. Presumably she's alive, but you know, the father's the name that's been thrown around, and obviously he knows things. Mm-hmm. Another super chat, I guess we got here.
Oh yeah, we did. Undying one. Show has never been perfect. I prefer imperfections now than the long subplot of the High Sparrow 2 years ago and Arya's endless train. No, there's definitely been other low points. I don't even know that I think this is the lowest point the show's been.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it is one of the lowest. But it varies for people.
Yeah. I mean, earlier this season, we were really happy with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we may just find ourselves right back in that place. We really do. There really are peaks and valleys. And one thing that kind of bothers me about the fandom, I don't mean you guys, and I don't mean, my co-hosts here. I mean, like, a lot of journalists. Because we live in an era of clickbait, and what you see now, like reactions to this episode, or Game of Thrones is just high fantasy now. What? After one episode? I mean, yeah, the pacing of the season has been, we've already gone at length on it about, but like, you can't just say what the show is now because of one episode and because of how often it changes and does different things. It goes in different directions. If different writers writing different episodes, and that's sometimes why it moves around so much, is because you have different people writing different things. So
we got like 3 super chats right there.
Okay, so I'll
yes.
end that spiel and we'll do that.
From Alex M. Podrick's so good they gave him the time for 3. Yeah, because they do that.
I guess Mira would too.
From Zainab Kazemi, I hope I said that right. Thank you. Did the fated Viserion change your mind about the Dragon Riders, especially the ones who believe Tyrion is going to be a Dragon Rider? Well, Aziz, did it change your mind?
It did a little bit because this is tricky because if a dragon is going to die in the book, is it going to die? If it dies before it gets a rider, then that means there won't be 3 riders, 3 heads of the dragon, which is kind of hard. Would be a big shock, a big surprise.
Well,
based
we'll
on
have
our
3 riders.
expectations.
We'll have the night, maybe a White Walker, if that happens.
Sure, but I don't know that's
yes.
what the dragon of 3 heads will have 3 heads prophecy was referring to. A third one being in the Night King would be kind of crazy, especially because I don't think the Night King is even a character in the book.
Well, I think it's notable that George said at one point that the 3rd rider wasn't necessarily a Targaryen.
That's true. That is true.
That a White Walker isn't a Targaryen.
Yeah. But so the other interpretation could be that someone is going to go down with their dragon, like maybe Tyrion or Jon. That's entirely possible. Or it could mean that and this is a theory we'll come to later, so I'm just going to mention it for now, and we'll go into detail on it later, that the White Walkers in the book make an ice dragon. It's a magical thing. And the Dany still has her, in other words, they don't make a dragon from a corpse. They just make because the ice dragon legend says that these things are much larger than regular dragons.
I think he might have gone on record saying there's no ice dragon in the story. But the exact wording he could have said there is no one, but yeah, there's going to be, the way he said it, but I think he has said something about that. So maybe we'll look into that for next time.
The fourth possibility, yeah, you're right. There is that we might need to look that up. The fourth possibility, and this is probably the least likely, is that a dragon dies, is animated, and is still ridden by a human, like say Jon Snow, because he's also undead, an undead rider with an undead dragon. That seems like you can see why I think that's the most crackpot possibility. But the long answer is we'll get to more of this later. The short answer is yes, it does at least impact my thinking on the riders and what's going to happen there.
Okay, let's get to these other super chats so we can move on.
A flurry of super chats.
We've got a few more. From Craig Lewis, where are you with respect to Gendry being Cersei's son? Was he in the Dragon Pit? Would be a great plot twist considering everything is laid out. I think I think I can speak for all of us that we're pretty down on that possibility completely.
Yeah,
I don't think we need to talk much more about it. About the Dragon Pit, we talked about it a little bit, but we'll talk about it later as well, about where Gendry is, because we have some questions about where he is. We'll get to that a little bit later.
But yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think there's any chance that Cersei is Gendry's mother. It would be too hard for her to hide a pregnancy from Robert that wasn't his kid, unless it was Jaime's kid, unless she's passing it off as her own, as Robert's.
Okay, so now from Adam L. Just joined live from the UK for the first time. Tweeted you guys a few times. You do great work. Was wondering if a Davos/Dany, we both lost children conversation could happen. Would suit both. Oh, that's interesting.
That's
I like
cool.
the idea that they might talk about that. I don't see it happening, to be perfectly honest, but I would like it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, Adam, by the way, I did see some of your tweets, and we got some of them grabbed for the document here, so we'll be bringing up some of your other points later. But yeah, there's a lot of people that could bond over their losses, and certainly Daenerys and losing a child, because she sees them as her child, as she very clearly stated the episode previous to this, she could be feeling that same sort of, emotions wrapped up around this, and it might create some different opportunities for her to bond with people in new ways. So that is very much fodder for some good interactions if they decide to go that way.
Yeah, we got another super chat from Simon Hatch. What if Jon being a Firewhite will allow Dany to have children when they get together? I don't think it will happen, but interesting to think about. I don't know if that would have any impact on that in particular, but I definitely don't think that it's, for sure that Dany can't have kids or anything. In fact, I think it's all more likely that she can have kids by the fact that they keep bringing it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little biased because I think that some of these reason that George put it this way was because is to push towards a different form of government when it's all said and done. And I've long been a believer that the Iron Throne won't be a thing by the end of everything. So to me, that means George won't come up with a way for Dany to have kids. On the other hand, she clearly starts having her blood flow again at the Dothraki Sea, and so maybe George is fooling us a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it could be anything. It could be a red herring. Get it?
No.
Sorry, but I mean, it could be. It could be that he wants us to think that she can have kids, but she actually can't. It could be that we've been meant to think she can't have kids, but she can this whole time, etc. I mean, and I wanted to say something real quick. You and Sean were speculating about Dario shooting blanks or whatever you guys said. Just to be clear, you can have sex with someone for years and not get pregnant. People try for a long time, so Dany can't say anything about getting pregnant or not based on that. I
it's
just
true.
wanted to clarify that.
It appears that she's had plenty of opportunity to get pregnant, but it's not a slam dunk.
Yeah, she just all it takes is they never had sex when she was ovulating. All these little things, it depends. So.
The thing, one argument against that, not that it doesn't tank the argument at all by any means, but if Dany thinks she can't get pregnant, she's not going to take any precautions.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, like I said, you don't have to take precautions to just not get pregnant. It's just coincidence.
I agree.
Anyways, to move on though, because I think we just got another super chat. We can't
Richard
move on.
Seymour.
From Richard Seymour, Cersei needs to join the alliance against Winter, otherwise she can't betray them next season, right?
Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah, if she pretends to go along with the armistice in order to make a move later, that would make sense. That would be her way of laying low so she can make a move, especially if Tyrion's right that just putting all these armies here is going to keep them in place. Keep her, kind of make her behave, so to speak.
We got another super chat from Lucifer Means Lightbringer.
Oh, hey, buddy. Thanks, LML.
Ice and Fire. He said, we've only seen Winterfell in the Dragon Pit in the Episode 7 preview, but it's going to be 79 minutes. Are they hiding something big in the rest of that time? Wall falls. We're going to talk about this more on Saturday, as you well know. But I think, there's more going on. But also, there's a lot of characters going on in King's Landing. I mean, we really only had 3 locations, I guess, in episode 6, and it was pretty long.
Yeah.
So
they might want to wrap some things up. They might want to show us Sam. We know we're going to see Euron again, which we might see, and we're going to see Theon. So there's that. But I've been saying the wall will come down this season. I've been saying that since the beginning of the season. So this is the last chance for that to happen. And I did say end of the season is when it would happen. So maybe. Yoko, you had something to say?
I just imagine that King's Landing is going to take a huge chunk, man. There's so much possibility. Like you say, so many, different dynamics to kind of show the viewer. I think there's going to be so much going on. And thinking back to episodes, the 9 and 10 episodes of previous seasons, there was often a kind of big event. So I think it be centered around King's Landing.
Yeah. Here's a lot of people are commenting with regards to a Bran vision. Yes, I think that it would be a major disappointment, major missed opportunity if Bran doesn't have another flashback. And this is part of why I brought up earlier in the episode how many show-only people still don't have a clear picture on who Jon's parents are. So they need further clarification. I imagine the showrunners know this. As much as we can accurately criticize them, whenever someone says D&D are just dumb, I just roll my eyes. I'm like, no, they're not. They are not just dumb, and that's not a good answer to why they made a decision anyway. So I think they're aware that this is unclear, and they know that it's a major story point, and we haven't had a Bran flashback yet. We had one at the end of last season, so I think that's a very good possibility. And a lot of people are hoping it's Harrenhal. I don't know if I would get my hopes up that high, but that would be really, really awesome.
Can you read that super chat, Aziz?
Yes. We have another super chat from Wilson Arms, and it says, Jon wouldn't kill the Night King because white for Cersei. Can you explain this? Contrast to Jaime's mad dash, it makes no sense at all to me, unless long game. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it is really unclear. And that is kind of an interesting comparison to Jaime's mad dash there. I'm not really sure. But no one's really had a great opportunity to take out Night King. I mean, people say Daenerys could have flown in on her dragon and done that. But let's be honest. Daenerys doesn't know who Night King is. She just showed up knowing that there was a problem that she needed to save her friends from. And she sees them on this frozen lake, surrounded. She's going to save them. She doesn't know who the boss other is. She can maybe look around and see some dude standing there, but it's all happening really fast. So I forgive that piece of writing that Dany didn't just go right for the boss other, because she doesn't know who that is. She has very little background on what's going on in this spot.
Yes.
All right.
Now we can move forward.
To I missed a shout out this was a new shout out. We have our Queen of Love and Beauty level, which is rarely used, but it has a shout out coming here to Casey of House Chickawawa from Torment Giants Wang. Our love is forever. It's our only Patreon level that allows you to have a shout out for someone else.
I guess Torment found someone else.
Yeah, that's right. How cool is this, though? It comes up right when people are mentioning Harrenhal, and then this comes up for the first time. So good timing for all of that. All right, so I divided, just as I did on Monday for the show only review, I divided the Beyond the Wall scenes into two categories. We'll start with the conversations, because those came first, and they're very distinctly separate from the action. And then we'll talk about the action, and then from there we'll go with aftermath and what's coming next and all these other things that we haven't talked about. But I guess first we have a super chat from the Snow and Winterfell.
Mm-hmm. The title is The Dragon and the Wolf, and episode titles usually have more than one meaning. R+L, get hype.
That's true. That is another reason to think maybe a brand vision is coming.
There's also been a lot of people over the past few weeks speculating on someone who could be Rhaegar Targaryen, a certain actor with a very funny name, Wilf Scolding. So that isn't confirmed or anything, but there are clues that maybe he could be, and he looks the part, certainly. So I'm pretty hopeful, actually.
Yeah, I am too. I think this is a reasonable hope. This isn't like one of those, I hope this is what they're thinking, because otherwise it doesn't make sense type of imagination theories that I've thrown out throughout the run of this show. Like, Gendry will be in the Golden Company. Nope.
I laughed so hard at you.
You already knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
I knew it wasn't that. I didn't know exactly what it was. I knew it wasn't that.
Yeah, you didn't know what it was, but you knew it wasn't that. Yeah. This is one that like has a lot more likelihood to actually happen, because it is, in line with the main storyline rather than just some kind of random idea for how they might handle something that's totally not book oriented. So, yes. You'll have to forgive my occasional wacky theorizing.
Not as bad as Sean.
Sean is our devil's advocate. Yeah, Sean is even more of a devil's advocate than I am. He will come up with reasons to maybe make it fit, and sometimes people agree with him, and sometimes people just roll their eyes. And well, that's the nature of the business. So let's talk about the Beyond the Wall chats, because I think personally this was probably my favorite aspect of the episode.
Yeah,
this
I
conversation, we really looked forward to them, and I was not disappointed. I mean, I definitely have some criticisms, as I usually do, but overall, yeah, I would give 2 thumbs up.
Yeah. I one thing I really liked in these interactions was Tormund saying, "Smart people don't come here looking for the dead," which I liked because I think this whole plan to convince Cersei with a white is completely idiotic. It's just from the very base level, this is a stupid plot line.
It was up there with it was a meta commentary up there with, I thought Gendry was still rowing. It's just like that. Self-referential.
Right.
But then we get into this other scene with Gendry whining here.
Yeah.
And I liked this scene. It made me think after the fact. I saw this funny text post. It was basically poking fun at the difference between the conflict between the Snow Squad being resolved so easily, despite things being so dire. I mean, Gendry was almost killed because of this. And the conflict between Arya and Sansa, which really seems so petty in comparison, and I think it seems extra petty when you're comparing it to these people banding together. And the post made me chuckle, but then I started to think about how it really shows how important the War for the Dawn is, that these people are coming together and that Arya and Sansa really don't know what's happening.
It's a great point, and it's kind of funny that there's all these Southerners that have witnessed the Night King and his army of the dead before pretty much anyone, or maybe literally everyone who is currently at Winterfell. You know? So it's like, Tormund seeing it first is fine, but Gendry and Daenerys? And all these people, like, they know, like, Arya and Sansa haven't seen the dead or the dragons yet. And Jaime needed to see the dragons, and Bronn needed to see the dragons before they were like, wow, okay, now I really get how much of a problem we're faced with. And it's the same with Daenerys. Daenerys flat out says that to Jon. She's like, you're right, you have to see it to believe it. And earlier in the season, Tyrion says, our minds weren't meant for just taking that in and feeling it. You know, you have to see it to really react properly. And I think that's kind of interesting. That is at least a slight saving grace of Sansa and Arya's bickering, is that they haven't seen it yet. They don't know. They haven't had this same compelling reason to put aside their bickering that everybody else has.
There was another thing I really liked in this little interaction with Gendry there, which was Sandor telling Gendry to stop his whining because, you know, they didn't kill him. And I thought that was funny because there are a lot of people who tried to kill Sandor Clegane that he isn't holding grudges against. And it seems like, I mean, for example, Beric Dondarrion, who he's with. And it made me think of the fact that he's, you know, likely to see Brienne, and shows that I don't think he'll be holding any grudges against her or anything for that.
I agree. I think he'll just be like, yep, you beat me.
You really have a fan in Torment Giants, fans.
Yeah. A good, nice observation from Joe Buckley here that Jon is with a lot of the last people to see Ned alive. You know, a lot of, like, Beric in particular is a good example, and even Sandor and Thoros and Jorah and Gendry were among the last. You know, like, Jorah's a bit more distant, but that's kind of neat. And of course, they've all had major interactions with Ned, even if they haven't seen him in a while. So that's kind of neat little parallel there. Now, Lady Gwen, you had take us away on Jon Tormund.
Well, I thought it was interesting that they refer to Mance again. You know, he's been brought up, or at least referenced, or his words referenced repeatedly throughout this season. This might have been the culmination of that. Tormund reminding Jon how many people died for Mance's pride. I think these words got to really stick with Jon, and they're gonna, you know, the final scenes are gonna tie back to this. Some of the things that he hears in these little chats with these guys here.
Yeah, and it's neat that Tormund is the one that kind of brings us all up. Of all people, it coming from him really means a lot, because it shows that, you know, Tormund had time to think about this. I
just want to point out, he was like, Beric, not really. He was a different actor.
That's true. That's true.
That's
fair point. So that means Sandor won't recognize his brother when he runs into him again. He's like, "That's my brother was a different actor." And he wasn't dead either.
Should we move on to Jon and Jorah?
Yeah. Well, one more thing. I think it's pretty clear, but just in case anyone missed it, this man, Tormund saying what he said almost certainly had an impact on Jon when he's lying there in front of Dany and decides to bend the knee, which of course has huge impacts that we have yet to fully discuss. We've talked about it a bit, especially Sansa and Arya's reaction to it, but the full, you know, impact of Jon bending the knee, we'll get to that. So yeah, Jon and Jorah. Lady Gwen, start us off on this one too.
So last time we talked a lot about, you know, the Longclaw issue, what was going to happen when Jorah recognized Longclaw, and as fate would have it, he didn't recognize Longclaw. Jon offered it to him. Yeah. So that was, I liked that scene. You know, it really kind of made me like Jorah a lot more, although I have to say I don't have a lot against him, but I did like it. I thought the reference to Jon's future children was interesting, and also his kind of very significant, Jon's significant pensive look at that reference. Food for thought, I think, especially, again, just like the thing, you know, Tormund's words, tying forward to that scene with Dany near the end.
I still wish that, you know, Jon would have offered the sword to Lyanna Mormont. I mean, he said, I don't, you know, you deserve it, but Lyanna Mormont deserves that sword. She's really been an MVP for him and a source of support, and clearly a badass. And it's not like, let's say she didn't wield it, it should be in the Mormont family if you think that. Anyways, I just was thinking about the idea of that scene, or what she would say to him, or if she would refuse it, because, you know, he's her king, so maybe she would just refuse it out of respect. I don't know.
I think also it was just a moment like him, he wanted Jorah to have it for that battle, you know, and maybe if he expected Lyanna to be in danger, you know, I don't know. But I agree, that is a little bit awkward. Also a little awkward that Jorah didn't mention Sam.
Yeah. I think there's a few missed opportunities. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that more later.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to say in this conversation, I know no one's going to trust my opinion on this because I don't like Jorah, but it did bother me that how easily Jon ignored the fact that Jorah was a slaver.
Yeah.
He went so far as to say that he was glad his father didn't catch him. Like, I know he's on this trek with you, but I don't know. It's hard for me to have any, sympathy or forgiveness for slaving.
Jorah did admit he was wrong. He's like, Ned was right. I shouldn't have slaved.
And Jon said, I'm glad he didn't catch you, which I still think that's going against the laws of the land and all of that. So, I don't know.
I think it's, like you said earlier, that's another thing that shows how important the War for the Dawn is, that Jon's willing to set that aside. It may be that under other circumstances he'd be like, no, get out of here, slaver. But here he's like, well, we're together.
I also don't expect him to be harsh with him. I just don't expect him to be so overt about this.
Okay.
But I also liked in the scene, Jorah's talking about how mutiny and betrayal is the worst way to go, and that's what happened to Jon. And Jon says, "I hate that he died that way." Yeah, you hate that you died.
I hate that I died this way. Although I came back. So, Yoko, you had a take here.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some crackpotting. Why not? Book crackpot. Okay, so in the books, would Jorah decline the sword so easily? Because for some fans, it solves a problem. Some fans believe that Jon will end up with Dorne, and that could be Lightbringer, because Jon has this vision of himself fighting with a flaming sword, and people think, hey, it could be Dorne. And the counter argument was, well, what about Longclaw? It's this great sword. So, if he did give it over, that would free it up for a kind of maybe upgrade for some kind of special sword, if Dawn is indeed a special sword. So a lot of ifs, but I like to crackpot sometimes.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. That is kind of cool. I kind of like that idea, and I agree with you. That is a long-standing kind of quote-unquote problem, was how is Jon going to maybe get a different sword if he's supposed to have a different sword? One, obviously, possibility is that he's not meant to have a different sword, that Lightbringer is, a metaphor, or that it's just going to go some other way in general. But, yeah, I do wonder about that too. But also, as you say, the idea of Jon and Jorah together in the books is no sure thing, especially not in those circumstances. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So we have a super chat, which we were gonna talk about it more later, but I guess we'll talk about it now if he wants to. From King Stork 1, much love to History of Westeros podcast and Radio Westeros. Do you think the Beyond the Wall scenes were D&D's homage to the Battle of the Ice coming in Winds of Winter? Martin alluded to Russian medieval history in St. Petersburg recently. Yes, he did. That is true.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's an interesting catch.
To be clear, if you haven't seen our Battle of Ice episodes or haven't read about theories about it all, the idea is that they'll fall into the ice, the opposing army.
That Stannis is trying to get them to go out on a lake and have the lake collapse under them, and that's how he can beat a larger army. And it's there's a lot of foreshadowing for it and a lot of just logistics that have it make sense. So I did not think of that comparison. That is pretty cool. In the behind the scenes, they didn't mention this as
we have it in the doc, so you did.
What's that?
They did.
I put it,
they did.
Lady Gwyn thought of it. I thought, anyways, we had it in the doc. But
cool. So
you know
I
what?
didn't think
Actually,
Lady Gwyn thought of it.
I'm going to say, I'm going to just say something here, because in the behind the scenes, I was particularly irritated that D.B. Weiss kind of presented this as, and then we thought about this thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, no, you didn't. You just borrowed that from George, who's, it seems pretty obvious that that's what's going to happen, or at least,
But do you really think they know that's what's going to happen? Like,
yeah.
I don't know that I think he told them about that. And I mean, we saw how things turned out for Stannis in the show. I don't think they knew exactly what was going to go down. I don't know.
I think it's pretty. It's one of those theories that I feel like is so clearly telegraphed.
Yeah.
And maybe. Given George's,
I don't know. I don't put it past them. But,
yeah, it's tough to know. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a pessimist.
I agree that both these theories are valid, because if they didn't know that George was planning that, then this is a natural idea for them to come up on their own. But yeah, it could be that they just kind of borrowed the idea without crediting it. But maybe it would be a spoiler, though, if they're like, because of this is going to happen in Winds of Winter, what is he supposed to say? Like, we got this idea from George, this thing that actually hasn't happened yet in the books. So that would be a spoiler. So there's also a chance that he didn't say that because of, not that they haven't spoiled book things before, just casually. So I wouldn't give him too much credit there.
I mean, they might have gotten a lot of complaints about it, and George R. R. Martin himself might have been like, "Hey, don't do that."
Yeah,
like there's a lot of explanations for why they wouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah. As much as I defend them on the way they've handled the show, a lot of ways I have no defense for them doing that. That's just crappy, just total crappy. Okay, so how about Thoros and Jorah? This was an interesting one that has a little bit of history to it.
We got the Siege of Pike history, which was something we hadn't really thought about much at all prior to this, I don't think.
Yeah, it's really... I thought this was a great scene, a great moment, because it just goes to show that, a lot of the stories we hear, there's a second, there is another side to every story. And as Thoros' bravery was just drunkenness, that's very... I mean, that's something that I feel like they captured George R. R. Martin really well with that. That conversation, something that he would invert the hero trope just completely like that. And so I thought that was really poignant. Did you guys have any takes on that, or I just thought it was cool?
Yeah, I more just thought it was a cool scene interaction. I didn't have a lot to take from it personally. Yeah,
and Jorah being an older guy, I guess he kind of maybe has fewer illusions about this. He probably wasn't as disappointing to him. He's like, well, I guess that's... oh, well. It's not like going to put him in a bad mood or make him sad. He's like, oh, I see.
Yes.
Perhaps the most standout conversation of all in this batch of one-on-ones and semi-one-on-ones was Beric and Jon. And I know a lot of people caught the "you must take after your mother" comment, which of course all book readers are like, oh, what? What's that? What's that? Lady Gwen, what do you have to say about that?
That's right. In the books, it's a transitive thing. You get Jon and Arya are noted to look like Ned, and Arya is noted to look like Lyanna. Therefore, we can assume that Jon looks like Lyanna. So he does indeed take after his mother, and I thought that was a sweet nod to book readers.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say has been spoiled by our co-patron, Mark Joseph. I was going to say that it's interesting the next episode is called The Wolf and the Dragon, ostensibly about Dany and Jon, but could it be about someone else?
I hope so.
Yes,
I really hope so. Or it could mean that you get your wish, Ghost riding a dragon.
Wolf on the dragon?
Or did Ghost already ride a dragon? If Ghost's pelt was Dany's, Dany was wearing Ghost's pelt, then yikes.
Jon is never going to be interested in Ghost after seeing those dragons, is he? He's going to be like, what the hell? I thought this was a really good present all those years ago.
Yeah.
No.
So the Beric and Jon conversation had a bit of a nod towards Jon's conversation with Maester Aemon back in the day about love being the death of duty. And Beric flat out says, you're not going to get any joy out of this. But Jon doesn't seem to mind, and Jon actually almost smiles, and he hardly ever smiles. And one of the smiles he had was with Gendry. Gendry saying, "You're short." And that may have been the only time he smiled this whole season. And that was kind of neat because what I got from that is Beric kind of spelling it out for him. He's like, look, this is our purpose. And I think Jon appreciated having that, being able to distill it to that. This is a complicated situation, but really Jon is like, this doesn't have to be complicated. We're fighting for the living, and we don't have to understand why. We don't have to understand everything. So I felt like it helped renew Jon's sense of purpose, which, I mean, he didn't need it renewed, but it helped kind of set his morale, in a place where it made sense. It's like, this is our job. We don't have to understand. Just do the job, have the duty. And Jon bringing up the Night's Watch vow was really poignant. So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff there. And Richard Dormer's just his voice. He's just a great actor. I just really... Yeah. So it's surprising that he lived, but I'm glad because of that. So we'll have more on that later. But
he's on his last life now, I guess.
Yeah, his priest is gone. That was a real video game comment there. It's like, careful, Beric, your priest is dead, That was really like a video game comment. Like, you're out of lives. Your healer's gone. So...
Melisandre's got to show up.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Melisandre's got to figure some things out here.
Yeah, so I had some thoughts. We were talking about these missed opportunities for people to talk about things when Aziz brought up Sam. And I was wondering, I started wondering about Beric and Thoros knowing about Arya being Arya Stark in the show, and yeah, they did know, and so I would have thought that they might have brought this up in passing to Jon. I can understand Sandor not bringing it up, given his personality. He knew as well, but, it makes sense for him not to necessarily bring this up. But the more I thought about it, the more I was wondering why Gendry didn't bring it up. And I think that's a pretty egregious missed opportunity. Because they were even talking about family when they first met each other. And so this is this connection that they have that Gendry knows about. But it could still happen. I'm not super hopeful about it. But
Jon and the Hound could still maybe
But yeah, I mean, Arya got some short shrift there by not getting anyone talking about her.
Yeah, I agree with you that Gendry was the real missed opportunity. Because Gendry and Arya got along. They were friendly.
They were close.
He has good things to say. The Brotherhood might be embarrassed about
losing her. And
not just losing her, but the fact that they were going to ransom her.
Yeah.
So they may not want to bring that up because it doesn't exactly make them look good. So I can kind of forgive that one.
And
But
Beric
the Gendry
had
one,
more important things to talk about.
Yes, that's
Thoros
true.
could have brought it up, but Beric, I think, definitely had something else to chat
Beric
about.
is just focused on the goal here. He doesn't care about that stuff at all. And his if we go with his memories, or he's losing his memories, then maybe you can chalk it up to that. But that doesn't apply to Thoros. But still.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Lady Gwen, what was your take here on this convo?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a bit of an oversight, especially the Gendry. It's just a kind of missed opportunity. But Arya and Bran haven't mentioned Rickon. Like, hey, where's our brother? Where's our other brother? So there's that. Who knows what they talk about off screen? Just leave that to our imagination. And like you said, it could still come up. But it comes back to where is Gendry anyway? And will we get to see Arya and Gendry this season? That was
I
haven't lost hope
so.
Totally.
I haven't lost hope either. I'm starting to.
So, a comment from Adam Llewellyn, who had a super chat earlier. He says, it would have been cool to hear Tormund or Sandor talk about having ridden a dragon. Yeah, that would have been cool. So Tormund being like, holy crap,
I would
that
like
was
to
something.
see Sandor like, I don't know if I want to get on. a little nervous.
It might be something that actually impresses Sandor. He might actually be like, yeah, that was cool. That was amazing. Something that...
And then he brings up, you had Jorah mentioning Sam to Jon, which you brought up earlier, which I wish he had. He certainly knows they were at the Night's Watch at the same time, because they both knew Jeor Mormont.
Both mentioned Jeor,
So he has that connection. But I had a question about all this, speaking of them riding the dragon. How many people can ride a dragon? I know I was already pretty down on Daenerys riding the dragon without a saddle, so I guess we're just accepting that she can hold on and latch in, but they all can hold on and latch in, and
Not quite. Jorah.
Yeah, Jorah did. Yeah, just like Dario said, 20 years ago maybe you could have done it, and yeah, he barely did it.
Almost lost him.
Yeah,
maybe there's your 3 riders. They're all on one dragon. That was a twist.
3 dragons. We got our undead rider too, because the white was Sandor just impaled it on a spike.
Yeah, we did get
on a horn or whatever he called that.
Yeah, whatever he impaled it on. That's true. I would have actually liked it if one of the people just died there, falling off the dragon. Hadn't made it.
LML says a dragon is not a bus.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was my thought when I was watching it. Was the dragon bus?
Yeah.
All aboard the dragon bus.
Someone should overdub some comedic children's music over that scene, shouldn't they?
Benny Hill music. Oh, they fell down.
We do have one example of 2 people riding a dragon together, which is Visenya Targaryen bringing the young, Lord Aaron aboard her dragon, aboard Vhagar, but that's a tiny boy. So I don't know.
I don't have a big problem with this because, as people who know have pointed out, dragons shouldn't be able to fly anyway. So if they can't fly, I don't know, give them a little more weight. But I agree with what you're saying, because how are they holding on? But they've already gone this
direction. If Drogon can just do this, then she should have just given some of them a ride up there in the first place. I don't know, it would have sped things up a lot. There's just when I start thinking about maybe she didn't know she could do it, but if she didn't know she could do it, then why did she try?
Yeah.
Anyways, all around I'm not super happy with this, but it's what they needed to do, I guess. Although I was starting to wonder if someone could ride the other dragon, and which would be harder because Daenerys isn't necessarily controlling it, but it would make it easier for me if there weren't 5 people on a dragon.
Yeah, it's like pushing. Like they're already kind of pushing this.
Now
they're pushing it 5 times more. Yeah, with heavy people. Sandor and Tormund are like
the biggest men in Westeros.
Yeah,
the biggest. It's true.
So let's look at this really cool shot. Ashea got this together for us ahead of time. Notice the mountain shaped like an arrowhead is not we have seen it before.
Yeah, it's from that Children of the Forest flashback from the Door episode.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So what we're probably seeing in the green version here is the other side of the mountain. Sandor is on the southern side of it.
Yeah.
The children are probably on the far side of it, which, it's a mountain, so it's still really far away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can see it's slightly different angle of it. They're clearly not where that weirwood tree was or anything like that.
But the idea that it used to not be cold is really interesting, and it brings up a really cool question. Is the birthplace of the others a thing in the books too? Is this location matter? Is it part of the Lands of Always Winter? And will we see it at all? Those are a lot of cool questions there. Do you guys have any takes on this? Do you think that it has applications to the books, or is it just the show wanted to create a birthplace so that it would be a visual thing?
Don't they mention the Heart of Winter? Isn't that in Bran's?
Do, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I would think that is a thing, and that it's likely that that's what that means.
Heart of Winter being their birthplace? Yeah, that seems like a good corollary. Yeah. Do you have a take on this, Yoke Boy? Do you think this is do you have a take on this?
Oh, well, I didn't have a take, but then Lady Gwyn said that, and I thought that makes sense. That's from Bran's dream when he's in a coma.
Yeah.
And he sees green seers impaled on ice spikes, and then at the end of the dream he sees the Heart of Winter. I'm going from memory now, but I have read it quite a few times. So I think that's a really good call, that the Heart of Winter, is their birthplace, and maybe it's kind of oppositional to Winterfell, which to me sounds like the place the Long Night ended, Winterfell. So maybe that's the two camps for the end game.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and this is a good thing to point out. I don't mean this particular theory or this evidence, but it's to the point that I made at the beginning of this episode, which is even in episodes that have all sorts of questionable things, there's fun things to relate to this book sometimes, even when sometimes it's just a matter of looking, because they get these things from George a lot of times, and that's why I'm adamant about looking for them, because it might be something they directly got from George. It's entirely possible they made up on their own, but if they get it from George, we should always consider that it came from George, and that makes it more fun.
Great note from Brett Terrell. Aemon One Eye had Alice Rivers on Vagar when he met Prince Daemon at Harrenhal and the Prince of the Queen. So that's one other with more than a small boy, a woman on, and they're both Vagar.
Yeah, and Vagar is huge.
Yeah, so there is that, but that is interesting.
Although Vagar was less huge in, Visenya's time. Considerably less huge in Visenya. Vagar was 50 back then and 180 when he carried Alice and Prince Aemon One Eye. So another conversation that was, had some different, maybe was probably the least meaningful in terms of book stuff, but was still a fun conversation, is the Sandor Tormund show.
And it had meaning for what was going to happen later, was Sandor and Tormund interacting a little more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lady Gwen, you noticed something here?
Yeah, I liked this interaction, and actually, it was one of our patrons commented. Marie French commented about Sandor saying that he hated gingers, which I thought was pretty funny, and I guess it was just kind of meant to be comic relief, but in light of Sansan,
maybe he can make an exception for her.
I hate gingers. I just thought, do you really hate all?
Lady Gwen and Ash, did you take this personally when Sandor said he hated gingers? Did you guys both
Definitely not, because I'm no ginger.
Yeah. You're only playing the role of one.
Yes, exactly. I just play one on TV.
Yeah, I did really like that "Kissed by Fire" line, which, obviously because of Sandor being kissed by fire, but as well. But I also like Tormund saying that Sandor had sad eyes, because he does. He really does have sad eyes, I think.
That's a good observation.
They're like hound dog eyes, get it? They are.
No, wait, I don't.
But of course, we can't not mention all this talk of Brienne. which was really funny. But I learned after that, because people were posting about it, that Jaime is actually an inch taller than Tormund. So Tormund shouldn't lean too much on the big monster baby angle. He needs to find another angle here. And overall, a lot of the Tormund scenes to me, especially with the Brienne talk, can feel a little fan servicey. Sometimes it seems like they're just making him this mouthpiece to be really funny and more than he necessarily is naturally. But I don't care. I like it. I like Tormund. I like Brienne. I like Jaime and Brienne, but I really do like that Tormund just genuinely just likes Brienne for who she is and how she is and doesn't want to change her and just wants to celebrate her, whereas, like, I don't know, Jaime has some negative feelings wrapped up in everything about her.
Yeah.
So I like Jaime and Brienne a lot, and I'm excited for them to see each other, and I want Jaime to be a better person, but I think Tormund's a better fit for her if she actually cared about him, which I don't think she does.
Yeah.
I don't think she cares about really romance at all, to be clear.
Yeah, she has a weird relationship with people being attracted to her, because the first time people were attracted to her, it turned out to be a big trick, a big joke. So that's some like relationship PTSD to kind of overuse a term PTSD, but still it's something. So yeah, but really maybe part of the thing that made up for Tormund being a little fan servicey, like you say, and is that this legit moment of fear we all had for him, which it really seemed like he was done for there, and it was a great visceral moment because it happened so fast that it's hard to like process and be like, oh, they're not going to kill Tormund, because it really looked like they were doing it. And in the behind the scenes, I forget which of them it was, but one of the showrunners said that one of the D's, right, said that when he watched that scene, he thought Tormund was going to die, even though he wrote the scene. He was like, wow. So he was kind of patting himself on the back for making it so realistic. But he's right. It really did. It was like a legitimately gripping moment.
Yeah, I think that was the only moment of the episode with action that was actually really engaging to me. And it was really engaging. I was worried, and it was scary. But that said, I'm no action fan in general, but for me, the other major battle scenes that we've had over the years all had something that I particularly liked. We had the Battle of the Bastards with that really, really visceral directing. We had Watchers on the Wall episode with that awesome tracking shot. Hard Home, as I mentioned, had this great character development for Carsey. And this one really didn't for me. And it had some things I actively disliked. Difficulty seeing what was happening in the fight, chaos, and red shirts just dying and not knowing who was who, and not really feeling the stakes. But for this Tormund moment, I did feel the stakes, and I was really worried about him. So there's that. And obviously Viserion I was broken up about. So there were things, but just compared to some of the other battle scenes they've had, it felt lacking to me.
And there's a note here from our co-writer, Joe Buckley, who says this was a bit of a nod to Dead Things in the Water, which is cool, whether it was intentional or not. That's absolutely true. And that's one of the creepiest lines in the books, at least until we learn more about it. It may remain one of the creepiest lines in the books when it's all said and done. But that line from Cotter Pike in his message is really creepy and really just sets the tone for what our expectations for the Winds of Winter and what we might see beyond the wall. I think it'll be dramatically different from what we saw on this show, but I do think that that's a very apt comparison. So let's talk about the bear.
Yeah, after Tormund mentions making do with what you've got, they see a bear.
That was well timed.
Yes.
I know, Yolkboy, you have a take here, but I want to throw something out really funny, is that also from behind the scenes, David and Dan have wanted this scene for 4 seasons in a row. They have been like, we want an undead bear. And they're like, no. They're like, the people who run the budgets and everything are like, no, you can't have it. It's too expensive. So they finally got their wish. The budget's gone up. I thought this scene, other than the Tormund moment of fear, I thought this bear scene had a lot more tension to it than the full battle, because they're in the snow and they can't see, and this bear could be anywhere. So I thought that was a pretty tense moment. But they're a thing in the books too, right? We hear this mentioned, don't we, Yolkboy?
Yes, they are called snow bears. They are a thing in the books, if you haven't read the books, or if you're a bit, it's been a long time. You can't really tell if they're polar bears or a kind of white grizzly bear. I'm a bit unsure. They're not described so well that you can tell. But yeah, they're snow bears. Varamir, Six Skins, the skin changer. He has a thrall of several animals, but he rides the snow bear, and it can stand at 13 feet tall. So it's real fantasy, larger than life stuff. Moore's Umber wears a snow bear pelt, which must look pretty cool. It's a shame he's not on the show, because I'd like to see what it looks like, because the bear's head comes over like a hood, the way it's described. That's pretty cool. And I think seeing a whited snow bear in the books is a distinct possibility, with the others coming from the north, and snow bears seem exclusively beyond the wall. So I'd say it might even be probable that we'll see a whited snow bear.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, we have seen a bear. It wasn't a snow bear necessarily. The grizzly at the fist. There was a bear at the fist, an undead bear at the fist. I just don't know what kind of bear it was.
That was I didn't remember that. I might have slipped there.
That's who killed. That's how one of the new first ranger was killed. One of the first rangers died.
Can we say that again?
One of the first rangers died at Castle Black when the two whites were sent. They brought the two whites in, and the one that was going for Mormont was stopped. But the other white killed the first ranger. And the new first ranger, I forget his name. It might have been Jarman Buckwell. I forget. But the new first ranger was killed when he charged the snow bear, or charged the bear. I don't know if it was a snow bear. That's the thing. So we may still get another bear, But I do think it's a precursor to other, undead animals. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, I think there'll be all kinds of creatures when they finally attack. I think it'll be, hodgepodge army of all sorts.
Spiders.
So, Lady Gwen, you had a take here as well.
Yes, I really liked that they showed the conflict once the bear was burning, and you have this burning undead snow bear. Sandor was terrified. He's literally paralyzed by the fire, and of course, that is his great fear. We've seen it numerous times, all the way back, Battle on the Blackwater. Here's a quote from the books where it just shows his terror right before he kind of breaks and deserts. Blood on Clegane's face glistened red, but his eyes showed white. He drew his longsword. He's afraid, Tyrion realized, shocked. The hound is frightened. So it's, he's terrified of fire. And in this scene, he just freezes. He really can't do anything.
Freezes. Ha ha ha.
Yes. Ha ha. But then I think going forward to the thing we talked about with him and Tormund, that was kind of him saving Tormund was really a moment of redemption, looking back at the scene where he really failed to do anything to help his brothers there, with the snow bear. So.
And
I'll be disappointed if we don't see some fallout from that. I expect to see Sandor being, feeling guilty over Thoros, because he was close with him.
Yeah, I think he might be. His story is so internal, it might be difficult for them to show it on TV, but maybe they'll throw some comments out that kind of indicate that his guilt. And of course, Jorah rushes up and is the one to finish the bear off, which, given that he's a Mormont, it's kind of fitting. Jorah knows what to do. He knows how to deal with bears. And this is also the first moment in the episode where we really realize how powerful Dragonglass is, that it can break the animation spell, which is interesting because it's not established in the show. In the books, it's a kind of an open question. It's something that even our characters ponder in the books. They haven't figured this out yet. They haven't gotten this far along. They haven't had Sam at the Citadel reading about these things. Well, Sam is at the Citadel, but he hasn't read about these things yet, or if he's going to. Patron Demetrios, the Besieger, wants to know, can you explain the differences between show whites, others, and what we know from book canon? Well, we're going to partly do that. What it seems to be here in the show is it seems to be the Night King was created by the others, and then he either made more like himself or the children made more like him, and then that they in turn raise the dead, and that if they're killed, then the dead that they've raised go down with them. It's also possible that the Night King being killed will just shut down everything. If you kill him, maybe all the White Walkers die, and then Barrick's comments sort of hint at that, but it's certainly no sure thing. But we're talking about how this relates to the books. So Yoke Boy, you got this quote here that gets us started really well with this Dragonglass, how does it work sort of thing discussion that we're about to have.
Yeah, okay, I'll read this quote. I found mention of Dragonglass. The children of the forest used to give the Night's Watch 100 obsidian daggers every year during the Age of Heroes. The others come when it is cold, most of the tales agree, or else it gets cold when they come. Sometimes they appear during snowstorms and melt away when the sky's clear. They hide from the light of the sun and emerge by night, or else night falls when they emerge. Some stories speak to them riding the corpses of dead animals. Bears, direwolves, mammoths, horses, it makes no matter, so long as the beast is dead. The one that killed Small Paul was riding a dead horse, so that part's plainly true. Some accounts speak of giant ice spiders too. I don't know what those are. Men who fall in battle against the others must be burned, or else the dead will rise again as their thralls. And this is from the infamous double chapter, the one that happens from two angles, Sam 1 in Feast and John 2 in Dance.
Yeah, and that is a great way to kick things off here, because there's a lot that the book characters still don't understand about Dragonglass. What it seems to be that show Dragonglass is less brittle than the books, but we don't really know that for sure. We do see weapons of Dragonglass in the books that you would think would shatter if it's as brittle as we've been led to believe. So maybe it's not quite as brittle as we think. Maybe it's just the fact is we saw Sam try to stab Small Paul and he hit his armor. So it's, we have yet to see a Dragonglass weapon strike the flesh of a white. We've seen a white walker, but we haven't seen a white. Now, we've seen it in the show a bunch of times now. In this scene, particularly, everyone was fighting with Dragonglass weapons, with the exception of with the exception of John, who's fighting with Longclaw, and the two Red Priest guys who were fighting with flaming swords. But everyone else had Dragonglass. Sandor was using the hammer for a little while, but as soon as he smashed the ground with it, he switched to Dragonglass weapons. So what was happening is they're stabbing the whites, and the Dragonglass breaks the spell. This was set up by the Benjen stuff earlier. Benjen saying that he didn't rise as a thrall because the children stuck him with Dragonglass and then did some other magic, apparently. And what's funny is you brought up Mor's Umber before, and Mor's Umber's nickname is Crow Food, and Mor's Umber has a Dragonglass eye. So it would be funny to think that if he dies in the book and doesn't rise like the rest of the dead because he's got a Dragonglass eye. Maybe not him, maybe somebody else. Maybe that comes up elsewhere, but that would be pretty funny if he doesn't rise because of the Dragonglass that's already in him. So we have another quote here. Hey, Lady Gwen, you want to read this quote that starts with "Who cares" by Gren?
Yeah. Who cares? Gren's axe sent wood chips flying. They come together, that's what matters. Hey, now that we know that Dragonglass kills them, maybe they won't come at all. Maybe they're frightened of us now. Very optimistic.
Yeah, pretty optimistic there, Gren. Sam's not so sure. He says, Sam wished he could believe that, but it seemed to him that when you were dead, fear had no more meaning than pain or love or duty. He wrapped his hands around his legs, sweating under his layers of wool and leather and fur. The Dragonglass dagger had melted the pale thing in the woods, true, but Gren was talking like it would do the same to whites. We don't know that, he thought. We don't know anything, really. And that's Sam to a Storm of Swords.
Such a scientist.
Yeah, Sam it's the wheels are turning. This is the earlier point, and this is before he goes to the Citadel and all that, and I guess he might get to that same point at the Citadel that he got to here in the show will hopefully get to in the books, where he's reading about more things about Dragonglass and about what's coming. Hey, Lady Gwen, you want to read this next one too?
Yeah. Whenever Sam thought of the cash John had found buried beneath the fist, it made him want to cry. There'd been dagger blades and spearheads and 200 or 300 arrowheads at least. John had made daggers for himself, Sam, and Lord Commander Mormont, and he'd given Sam a spearhead, an old broken horn, and some arrowheads. Gren had taken a handful of arrowheads as well, but that was all. So now all they had was Mormont's dagger and the one Sam had given Gren, plus 19 arrows and a tall hardwood spear with a black Dragonglass head. The sentries passed the spear along from watch to watch, while Mormont had divided the arrows among his best bowmen.
Mm-hmm. Also, Sam, a Storm of Swords 2. or Sam 2, A Storm of Swords. Second, A Storm of Swords, yes. And so, continuing on this line of thought from a book perspective, Stannis says that he's mined a lot of dragonglass, or ordered his Castellan to do that. We don't have any confirmation that any of that dragonglass has actually reached the wall. And we don't know whether it will, because, the Tyrells come and presumably take Dragonstone. We don't know if any of those shipments got off, got sent north. So we'll have to see. By the way, I want to make fun of myself. My friend Rudy pointed out that on Monday I said real world dragonglass. I used the term instead of just like saying obsidian or something. I'm just too deep in it. I'm too deep in the material. It's all this. The real world is Westeros, and the fake world is elsewhere. Whoa, we had some cat thunder. I'm gonna say that again.
Fell.
The real world is Westeros, and the fake world is the real world.
Yeah.
There's also a quote here from Melisandre, which I don't know that she knows what she's talking about, but she says, necromancy animates these whites, yet they're only dead flesh. Steel and fire will serve for them. The ones you call the others are something more. So she sort of throws shade on the idea that dragonglass will take out whites, but I think they probably will. I think it will probably break the spell. We've seen enough to hint at that. It's not a sure thing, but that's kind of how it's looking at this point. Do you guys have a different take on that, or do you feel like that's probably what the deal is?
Yeah, it could be. Mel isn't the number one advisor that I would choose, but I guess.
Yeah. She's old, but not that old, right?
Right. She wasn't there.
She's not thousands of years old. She wasn't there. Yeah, she wasn't there from the first long night. How many whites has she actually encountered in her life? I'm guessing not so many. Maybe she's seen fire whites. Yeah, right? There's those. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so this next little bit is called Run, Gendry, Run. So, lady, go ahead and take us away.
I'm going to do a little history nerding at the moment, because I was palpably reminded at the end of the race, and this was kind of... this was emphasized by all the people making marathon jokes, by the way, on Twitter after the episode, or all over the place, not just Twitter, of the origins of the marathon, which is the legend of the Greek soldier Philippides running the distance from Marathon to Athens, which is 26 miles thereabouts, to announce a great victory over the Persians. And he fell down dead upon delivering his message. So when Gendry ran all the way back to the wall and then fell down right at the end, I was out of Philippides, of course, because I'm a history nerd.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. I like that. It's a good comment. That's a good catch. I didn't catch that, and as much as I am a fan of Greek history, I feel like I should have. Okay, so I see some people in the chat here disagreeing with what we've said, sort of. First of all, we do not know whether dragonglass works on whites in the books. It is not clear. The dagger that Sam used on Small Paul broke on his armor, not on his body. So there is nothing conclusive there. Anyone saying that the dragonglass definitely doesn't work on whites is wrong. Unless you have a quote to prove it, you are wrong. Because I looked for this specifically yesterday, and I found nothing. I found only what we've shown you, and the evidence we have is that Sam isn't sure, and that no one else knows.
The evidence we has.
The evidence we has. Yeah.
Doesn't Small Paul swallow some burning wood, and then it kind of, you know, it's the fire which wipes it
Eventually,
out.
it's the fire. Yeah.
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 But there's no second attempt to kill him with dragonglass after the knife breaks on his armor.
He's never stabbed by dragonglass. Yeah.
We don't really know.
Okay, so let's talk about another little reference here that's kind of funny. On Frozen Pond is what we're calling the overnight, or maybe more than one night, sitting around on the lake. And you caught you made a great reference to another famous fantasy story here, Lady Gwyn, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, I wasn't alone. I mean, I noticed it when I watched it, and of course other people have commented on it. I've seen some great memes. But Sandor Fool of a Clegane.
Yes, that's awesome. Even throwing a rock.
Pippin.
Yep.
Pippin took, Peregrine took, throwing that rock down the well in the Mines of Moria and waking up the Balrog in Lord of the Rings. So I thought that was it. Maybe it was meant to be a nod, maybe not. But
I was wondering, Beric lights up his weapon there. And I was wishing that Beric would tell Jon about the sword trick so we could see if it works for Jon.
Yeah,
I want to know if it'll work. But also, I was wondering, can't he just light some other weapons as well for them? Like, it seemed like it was pretty useful. Like, he can use his blood, to light it for some other people.
Yeah, he could have lit Sandor's sword before he switched to the hammer and the dragon
I don't know, just a thought I had. It's not like they had time exactly for it, but Beric and Jon talk to each other.
Yeah, it seems weird. Also, the weird thing about that was he was lighting the sword on fire by dragging it along his hand. His gloved hand. I guess he could have a hole in the palm, which is fine, but still, it's a little funny to see that.
There's evidence in the books that it's the blood that lights a glass candle. So,
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, the glass candles, they're made of dragon glass. And they have to try and light one in a black room, a dark room, but they've got razor sharp edges. So we thought, is this what's happening? It's blood magic, and then magic comes back to the world as it is, and then it starts to work. It must be blood magic, otherwise, what are the razor edges for?
Yeah, that's a good point.
LML asks, why does Beric even have gloves? Well, I guess
Probably because
I wonder what he experiences. How much cold does he experience?
Well, I think they just had to do the human perspective here because they're literally filming these scenes in Iceland.
Oh yeah.
Like, what are they going to do? Have the real
that.
Actor not wear gloves in Iceland?
Was there anything about that, Lady Gwyn? Were you saying something about that? I was asking about what he could feel, Beric.
Oh, what he could feel.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you were addressing. You were saying something. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I don't know what he could feel. Yeah. Probably not very much.
Yeah.
He was repeatedly killed and hanged. And
well, part is that I was wondering, one, does Beric feel the cold really at all?
Right.
Two, does Jon feel the cold really at all? And because if he does, I think that it makes a lot of sense. I want him to not feel it very much because then it makes a lot more sense why he could survive falling into that water and come out.
Yep.
So I choose to think that he, is pretty immune to it.
Perfect example of headcanon filling in the gaps to make more sense than what we've been presented with. Yeah, I agree that it fits better if you imagine Jon has some cold resistance, just like how Dany has some heat resistance. Well, Dany has a ton of heat resistance in the show. In the book, she has maybe mild heat resistance. Well, I mean, she didn't burn in the show, in the book either, but that's supposed to be a one-time thing. But anyway.
Of course, Bernadette points out that, he seemed like he had hypothermia. He seemed pretty messed up afterwards.
He did, yeah.
But he also had a long journey after that, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it would still affect him. He'd have some resistance. Like, normally, most people would just be dead right then. They would be frozen to death instantly. They would never come back. But because Jon has some cold resistance, he can climb back out. But it still affects him because he's still somewhat human. He's just not all the way there. I don't know. It's magic. So, alas, Thoros, our one real casualty, apart from Viserion and, maybe some red shirts, and another White Walker went down too. But Thoros is, we predicted this because, all these characters are going beyond the wall, and those are the ones we were worried about. We didn't really think about the possibility of Viserion going on the wall nearly as much because, well, we didn't see him walk into the north at the end of last episode. So, of course, you consider the characters who were definitely in the north more than the theories. So, Yolkboy, what did you think of Alas Thoros?
I was glad that there was a cost. I'm always glad when on a mission like this, you feel the kind of hurt. I think that's a good thing for the story, really. And I'm glad he died. He served the Lord of Light to the last minute, so he could die proud. The drunken priest who's probably had a lot of regrets. At least he died, kind of facing off. Well, against the Night's King. It's just a shame that he was killed by the bear, and It would have been better to be more involved with the whites, I think, and kind of make that scene more dangerous, as we discussed anyway.
Maybe if he had more rum, he would have survived.
Oh, yeah.
His endless flask had been a little more endless. So.
I think he pours rum on his sword. That's what it is. It's rum, and then he lights it.
Oh, yeah, it's like one of those...
Perfectly good
drinks.
rum. Yeah. On the other hand, maybe Thoros wasn't so happy about freezing to death. I mean, he did his wound played a part in why his immune system was weaker and why he was made more sense for him to freeze to death because he was taking bad wounds. But that is slightly awkward for a red priest to freeze to death. So we come back to something that we brought up earlier thanks to a super chat. So let's round that out. Lady Gwyn, more historical references here. We're not just pulling out the book references today. We got the real world historical references that are coming up in a lot of places. So let us know. Take us away here.
Yeah, turns out this was a good episode for history nerds. As we talked about earlier, there's a very good possibility that this battle on the ice could be playing out in the Winds of Winter with Stannis and the Freys. If so, then that is inspired by a real-life 13th century battle in Novgorod, which is Russia, modern-day Russia, part of modern-day Russia. We both have episodes on this topic, I believe, both of which feature guest Brittany B. Fish. And I think we would all agree that this seems like a very fair bet for the way the Stannis storyline is going to play out.
There's so many hints in Dance and also the preview, the Theon preview chapter, isn't there? There's just so much kind of foreshadowing that this is going down. It's hard to ignore it. It's Nevsky, isn't it?
Alexander Nevsky. So what they positioned themselves very similar, on an island and lured their enemy out onto this sort of booby-trapped ice, and they fell through the water, and then they were able to win in that way. So it's an idea taken from history, maybe from George himself in terms of the showrunners, but I still think it's a cool thing. Yeah,
definitely. History provides so many amazing examples of fodder for storytelling, especially for battles. History has a lot of battles, doesn't it?
Yeah. Endless tapestry. Yeah.
And there are some of the most recorded things that have ever happened. So much of history is lost, but battles are well recorded. Plenty of them weren't, but they're among the most common things that get recorded and passed down. So you had a take on Beric's take as well, Lady Gwyn, about his pointing out the Night King and saying, let's just get him.
Yeah, he's, he comes up. I think, he suggests this suicide mission, kill the Night's King. So I think that Beric's death more than once through his conversations with Jon is pretty strongly telegraphed. And especially now that Thoros is dead, if we look at it logically, Thoros, especially given all the telegraphing that Beric is going to do something crazy, sacrifice himself, Thoros really had to die so that Beric can. So that whole thing, like you said, his priest is dead now, so just clears the way for Beric to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting. And that's something that this episode, a good critique of this episode that I saw was that they're putting the story in cool places, but they're not making much sense in how they get there. Like, as much as I had complaints about this episode, I like where it leaves things. I like where it puts us in a lot of places. Because like having an ice dragon or an under dragon, that's really cool. I'm really curious what they're going to do with that. How they got to the point of having an ice dragon, well, that is questionable. But given where we're at now, like, I like that. So, so it's like they took weird routes to get to cool places, or nonsensical routes to get to cool places. So that's at least one positive thing we can say. So, yeah, Lady Gwyn, I guess we should talk about the actual dead dragon. We should get into the battle, some of the other big parts. Of course, Thoros' loss has felt pretty hard, but Viserion's death.
Yeah.
Big deal, huh?
Big deal. I mean, I had to think about it. I watched it a couple times. I actually, on one of my rewatches, I had to stop it because I think Viserion's death is one of the saddest things I've seen on Game of Thrones in a real long time. And as problematic as this episode was on a number of levels, that scene really, really got me. I found it kind of weird that I was so upset about a CGI beast falling out of the sky, but I think it was the most upset I've been during a Game of Thrones episode since probably the Red Wedding. And I really did think back on it pretty hard to see if there had been anything since then that affected me so deeply. And I don't think there has been. So.
Yeah, it was pretty emotional for me too, especially with the, screeching of the other two dragons and the thought of them missing their sibling just broke my heart in particular. But I did laugh out loud in the moment because of how ridiculous the Night King's throwing skills were to me. Like, Aziz can vouch, I just went, huh! Just in that moment.
I'm kidding.
I really did. I felt so bad afterwards because it was sad, but just the idea that he could be this strong and not just utterly destroy someone in single combat was just amusing to me. And I was like, it made me start wondering if the other White Walkers are able to do this. Like, do they have the ability to throw these crazy spears?
Well, I think what it might mean is that we won't see the Night King in single combat for a long time. He never has been in single combat.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, if he fought someone, would he just crushed? I don't know.
Yeah, you would think so, at least maybe, but maybe that is why Arya's shooting him or someone sneaking up on him makes more sense, because just standing face to face with him just doesn't make sense.
It's true. It makes me less sure that I'm glad Jon didn't go after him there and go fight him, because he couldn't have won, I don't think, at all. So yeah, there is that. And
if it's true that killing him just ends everything, that explains why he, even though he would be a great hand-to-hand fighter, why he would stand back. Because there's no reason for him to risk himself. Like a lot of commanders, even if they're the best fighter in the army, it still makes sense for them to stand in the back, because if they're dead, then that's it. That just ruins
Stannis and Tywin both lead from the back in the books.
Yeah, it's true. And a number of other commanders do as well. It's notable when they don't, almost. Someone like Daemon Blackfire leads from the front. That's or like Robert Baratheon. That's it really means a lot, and it does a lot for morale. But it also makes the whole cause risky, because it could just end at any moment. It's like, if Robert dies, well, what do we do now? So, Yugba, what was your take on Viserion's death?
Yes, sorry about the tears about Viserion. I thought I was kind of glad that there was, like I was saying about there needing to be a cost in the story. I was kind of glad of this monumental cost. I thought it just made everything so interesting, a lot more interesting than if they just succeeded, flew off, whatever. I was glad there was this huge moment. So George has likened the dragons to kind of nuclear arms. And I guess now we're seeing how such a monumental and dangerous advantage can be turned on its head. When this dangerous thing gets in the wrong hands, like nuclear arms falling into the arms of the wrong people. How devastating that potentially could be in our world. It's being played out in Game of Thrones now with this new dragon. I think that it was great, and especially for the kind of tension going forward into the end game, that the bad guys almost on an even keel now with a dragon.
Yeah, and Dany is, her reaction was painful too, but she doesn't even know. None of them even know. She's gonna eventually be presented with seeing her undead child, coming at her living children, I suppose, and people she cares about, and that'll be really hard. Remember how we talked about how painful it for us to see like a Hodor white, or now we can, Thoros won't be a white, he was burned. But at some point we kind of expect to see a character as a white that we liked, even if it doesn't happen in the show. I think it'll happen in the books, and that's gonna be painful. But now we've got Dany is gonna have that pain. She's gonna see undead Viserion, and that'll hurt.
Mm-hmm. Before we move on too much from this actual dragon part, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up something you guys talked a little bit more about in the show-only episode, which was the idea that we talked about before in our episodes is that the Night King maybe had to be a green seer originally to become the Night King. Maybe there was some first men blood, or we'd speculated on that sort of thing. And so following that, if the Night King was a green seer, when he became the Night King, then yeah, maybe he still is one. And maybe just like Bran has these visions, the Night King had a vision about what was going to happen here, and that's why a lot of things that maybe didn't make sense to people actually do make sense, that the White Walkers have a very specific plan and are biding their time. That's why they don't just, shoot Jon. They can see the future, but they can't just see the future. They obviously aren't seeing that Jon or Daenerys or whoever will be the one to destroy them, because then they would do something to stop that. I think they saw a bit of a vision of the dragon and the fact that they could take down Viserion.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe not even Viserion, but a dragon, or this is their way around the wall, maybe, because we still, right now, in show canon, have no idea how they're getting past the wall. Now one of them can fly over, but that doesn't necessarily lead to the wall coming down and creating a way through. If the dragon can breathe fire, well, that's that. It can melt a section of the wall, and there's their way through. But if not, if it breathes ice, then I don't know, does he get to craft a giant stairwell out of ice for everyone to climb over, something crazy like that? Is he going to fly over the wall and just break the
Night
gates
King
open?
Just throw his javelin at the wall and just crack it with his super strength?
I still like the body ramp, the white.
Oh yeah,
the big old ramp, yeah. Because then they could just fall off. They don't have to build a ramp the other side. They could just jump off like they did at Hardhome. They'll just plummet down into the snow like Super Theon and Sansa, jumping off a much taller wall. So yeah, I do like that. And to me, it wouldn't make sense for Night King to not have been a former Green Seer. Like, where does he get all these powers? I mean, he has powers that feel like corrupted versions of what Green Seers do. He can animate the dead and control them instead of animals. And there's so much prophecy and prediction in the werewood net, it's a big part of it. And if the children created them, then he should have the powers that they, have, because they made him. So that all fits. To me, it's a long-standing theory that I really agree with is that they created the walkers. Maybe in show canon, it's just the one who then made more of himself. But either way, they created it, and it got out of hand. They did not intend for some of these abilities that the Night King or the Walkers have to be in play. They didn't see this coming. They didn't know that it would make the long night, or they didn't know that they'd raise the dead. They just thought they were making maybe some unkillable warriors, that the humans couldn't fight. So I don't know. So I definitely think this theory plays for headcanon, even if it's not what the showrunners had in mind. It also makes it a little easier to swallow the idea of them having chains, which I don't really have a problem with them having chains. They already have armor, like metal armor, and they've been around a long time. But it means that they were prepared. They knew this was going to happen, and they had the gear all ready. So, but as much as I can make sense of that, I can't make a whole lot of sense of Benjen. Yeah, what do you think, Lady Gwen?
No. Deus Ex Benjen once again. I think a lot of us. I was talking to some people after the episode. Were hoping that maybe Rhaegal would come back, and scoop Jon up and rush him off to safety or something. I don't know.
I would have been way better. Yeah,
that would have been way cooler. It would have made some sense or something. This was pretty much just out of the blue. And, among the little things that I've not allowed myself to complain about, a lot of little things, the fact that when he rescued Bran and he had scooped all Bran and Mira up onto his horse and they all rode away together, and now this time...
No. Okay, I'm okay with this one.
I think he's trying to save him time. It really wasn't very much time, though. Like, we saw him go down.
Yeah, he's worried about hypothermia setting in. So he needs Jon's horse to go as fast as possible.
Yeah. Right. That was the only thing I could think of, but it's still...
But Benji could have gotten on, ridden like a mile, then gotten off.
Yeah.
Exactly. Get me out of harm's way and then send him on.
So even with my explanation, it still doesn't work. Yeah. It just...
Yeah.
And
I did think of that. It still just didn't sit with me.
As for Benjen showing up in the first place, with that timing, I was wondering if Bran was able to communicate with Benjen, as after all, the previous Three-Eyed Raven was able to. And so I was wondering if it was possible that, he'll bring his guidance up, but I'm pretty doubtful about that. But it's possible that Bran sees Jon and brings up Benjen and said, yeah, I sent him to come save you or something.
It's possible, absolutely, yeah.
It's possible. But even if there isn't that, I think it makes some sense for Benjen to generally be keeping a radius around the army of the dead, to be nearby.
Yeah, what else would he be doing, right?
What else would he be doing? But also, even if Bran didn't tell him something here, the previous Three-Eyed Raven could have given him enough of a heads up to tell him this is what you need to be doing.
Watch out for this or something.
Yeah. So it's fine for him to show up, I guess. I'm still not crazy about it.
Yeah, and then once they're surrounded on the ice lake, what's he going to do? He's got to I can't save them in that position, but once an opportunity opens itself up, then he can rush in and do something. But still, that doesn't make it work. It just makes it a little less bad. Some aspects make sense, but quite a few others don't.
Yeah, and they're just unsatisfying, honestly. Whether they make sense or not, I just don't think they're good TV.
Yeah, I don't either. What else is another thing is Dan and Dave just keep calling him Cold Hands.
Yeah, I know.
Behind the episode, he's not Cold Hands in the books. George has never been more emphatic about something.
He's called Benjen in the show. Jon goes, Uncle Benjen? So, that's what he's going by. No one's calling him Cold Hands.
Uncle Benjen, that makes me laugh because I think of Uncle Ben's rice. I just think of it's the wrong connotation.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Showing my age,
that's,
I guess.
Yeah, that's a generational thing.
All right.
Okay, so more so than most episodes, there's a lot of aftermath to discuss here. A lot of setup. And this is why I said we'll be doing a little bit more of talking about what's coming, just because of the nature of this episode. Normally we wait on that for Saturday, but we have enough fodder for that we'll do some of it now and a little more of it later. Let's start with the ice dragon, though. This is crazy. There's definitely context from the books. Like Ashaya said earlier, George we'll have to verify that whether he said there's not going to be an ice dragon in the books, but an undead dragon isn't necessarily the same connotation.
I've never heard that. I don't mean to contradict anyone, but I know what, a lot of his interviews I've never heard him say that personally.
Okay, well, we'll maybe need some clarification on that later. In the meantime, Ashaya's going to even do a little research right now while live. In the meantime, this is where the idea of the ice dragon comes from. In the books, it's a constellation, and it's a very meaningful constellation based on these details. And here it is. When they lost their way, as happened once or twice, they need only wait for a clear cold night when the clouds did not intrude and look up in the sky for the ice dragon. The blue star in the dragon's eye pointed the way north, as Osha told him once. So it's kind of like the North Star. It pointed the way north, but it's blue. It's the blue star in the dragon's eye. How can you not think of that if you're aware of it once you see this stunning blue eye of Viserion open? It's really hard to not, And there's kind of a cool parallel with Jon touching Drogon, even though he's afraid, and touching Drogon and kind of maybe hey, what's going on here? Is this Jon, is this foreshadowing for Jon riding his own dragon? And then Night King touches Viserion, and it's kind of a neat little parallel. So, Lady Gwen, you can start us off here. What did you think about this?
Well, when I saw them dragging Viserion out of the water, I was struck by the line, "A dragon is no slave." And in my excitement after the episode, I incorrectly remembered that as being Viserys, which was pretty silly. But I think the sentiment remains because that came to my head right away. A dragon is no slave. And it just, I thought, what a tragic ending for a magnificent beast who should not be made into an undead slave of the Night's King. But maybe there's a little hope in that line. So who knows?
And I want to back up a little something I said earlier, because we had a super chat asking us about how this affects our theories about riders. Well, there's a huge piece of evidence that Tyrion will ride Viserion from one of the Winds of Winter spoiler chapters. So I'm going to say what it is here. If you guys haven't read that Tyrion spoiler chapter from the Winds of Winter, you're going to want to, skip ahead 30 seconds or something. But Jorah kills the messenger that comes from the slavers to say, hey, you second sons, you need to go here and do this. And Jorah kills that guy, which forces the issue. So basically like, yep, now we're back on Dany's team because Jorah just stabbed this representative and when he stabs this guy, the guy falls on a Syvas table. And Tyrion just idly picks up the white dragon piece that's covered in blood. I mean, come on. That is some... If you're thinking about foreshadowing, that is some heavy-handed foreshadowing. It's not heavy-handed. It's just very meaningful. Heavy-handed is sounds like it's negative. But, I mean, it's very, very straightforward foreshadowing. It doesn't necessarily mean Tyrion will ride it. But it does... a dragon piece with blood on it might be Viserion's going to die. That's another way to look at that, maybe. But the fact that Tyrion picked it up and the fact that Tyrion's arc revolves around dragons, that Makoro says, I see you surrounded by dragons, the saddle thing, all these references to Tyrion and dragons. Set aside Tyrion Targaryen, right? Because that doesn't have to be a thing. It might be, but it does not have to be a thing. His arc is just fully dragony. There's just so much dragon stuff around him. So the idea that Viserion dies here is interesting because there's also so much foreshadowing for Tyrion riding Viserion. So I don't know. I don't know how to connect those two dots and make it work. But it's cool. I'm not in a bad way. I'm curious, and maybe it'll take more thinking. But anyway, Yukbo, you had a thought here about the whole nature of the ice dragon.
Yeah, so people are wondering now if this white dragon will still breathe fire. You mentioned the possibility, as did our patron, Sophie, wondering if the Night's King could kind of burn a hole in the wall. And, that's certainly plausible, isn't it? But we're leaning towards this kind of ice dragon idea. And Lady Gwyn has... Maybe this is a spoiler for people that haven't read the Ice Dragon book from George, but it's just a description of the Ice Dragon. I don't think there's any plot given away. Do you want to read the quote?
Yeah, I don't think there's no plot here. And for those of you that don't know, I brought my prop, the Ice Dragon. This is the children's version, but you can also find it as a short story in the Dream Songs collection. To be clear, this is a story set in a land that has a lot of elements that look like Westeros, but George is on record saying that it's not set in Westeros. So they're technically not connected, but there's clearly some influences here. And hey, George wrote about an ice dragon, and we have a lengthy description, so why not read it to see what George might think an ice dragon
do it.
Looks like. So the ice dragon was a crystalline white, that shade of white that is so hard and cold that is almost blue. It was covered with hoarfrost, so when it moved, its skin broke and crackled as the crust of the snow crackles beneath a man's boots and the flakes of rime fell off. Its eyes were clear and deep and icy. Its wings were vast and bat-like, colored all faint translucent blue. Its teeth were icicles, a triple row of them, jagged spears of unequal length, white against its deep blue maw. When the ice dragon beat its wings, the cold winds blew and the snow swirled and scurried and the world seemed to shrink and shiver. And when the ice dragon opened its great mouth and exhaled, it was not fire that came steaming out, the burning sulphurous stink of lesser dragons. The ice dragon breathed cold. Ice formed where it breathed. Warmth fled. Fires guttered and went out, shriven by the chill. Trees froze to their slow, secret souls, and their limbs turned brittle and cracked from their own weight. Animals turned blue and whimpered and died, their eyes bulging and their skin covered with frost. The ice dragon breathed death into the world, death and quiet and cold.
Whoa! So it's awesome. It's cold. It's not like Silver Surfer. Yeah. It just breathes cold and it makes ice. And you know what? I'll read a quote now from the World Book about the ice dragon. Of all the queer and fabulous denizens of the shivering sea, however, the greatest are the ice dragons. These colossal beasts, many times larger than dragons of Valyria, are said to be made of living ice, with eyes of pale blue crystal and vast translucent wings, through which the moon and stars can be glimpsed as they wheel across the sky. Whereas common dragons, if any dragon can truly be said to be common, breathe flame, ice dragons supposedly breathe cold, a chill so terrible that it can freeze a man solid in half a heartbeat. It's also pointed out that they melt when they die, so no one has bones or evidence of them.
Yeah, and that's just really cool. And so, as I said earlier, we had a lot of quotes pulled for this, and I think hopefully this has enhanced your experience of the last episode. If you didn't like it a lot, maybe this helps. It certainly does for me. I love relating things to the books whenever we can, and this definitely provided us with a lot of fodder to make these comparisons. We have a couple of super chats here that this first one is very much in line with what we're discussing.
Yeah, from Slope. Why doesn't he, as he is a Night King, just fly over the wall, burn or freeze everyone at Eastwatch, hop off the dragon, and open the gate himself and let the whites through?
Why doesn't he?
We don't know if he can.
That might be exactly what he does. We don't even know if that thing can still fly. I assume that it can, because its wings weren't damaged, and maybe it could anyway, even if the wings were damaged. But that might be it. He might fly over the wall, and I mean, I wouldn't go to Eastwatch if I were him.
I would. Eastwatch.
Yeah, go to one of the castles that's empty and just go there instead. The wall is a lot of abandoned space along it, so he could easily find a place to do that. That might be exactly what happens. I mean, I think that would be more sensible than having the dragon breathe fire and melting a section of the wall. But
I like the idea of the Night King opening a door, period.
Yeah, just breaking the gate out. Can they pass through the gate, even if it's broken? You know, like with the magic and everything. Yeah, that's what I was
wondering, if he was even able to just fly over, or if he wouldn't be able to, or what.
So since this question was worded, what's stopping the Night King from doing that? That might be stopping him from doing that. That might be. The magic in the wall might be the thing that makes this impossible. So we'll have to see. Maybe we'll find out next episode. Maybe at the end of the finale, we'll see Night King on his dragon and give us a cliffhanger for next season.
We've got another question here from Elizabeth Chris. Was the dragon turned into a white or a white walker? If it's a white, will fire burn a dragon white? Thoughts? Oh, that's funny, the idea of it being vulnerable to that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people debating that. Some people are saying that because Viserion was dead, that it would be a white. But, well, there are a couple things. One, the Night King had to touch him, which is different, closer to what he did with Craster's baby. Two, you could say that, you know, the it's magical dragon. He could easily have different, you know, abilities in that respect.
Yeah.
But I think it's notable that he had to touch him. And I think part of it could just be that while he could raise normal whites just by raising his hands, this was a really hard thing, so he had to touch him. But I think there's fodder for him being a White Walker, but I don't get what the significance. Like, I don't get what that would do what that would change, really.
It makes more sense, like Lady Gwyn says, if the dragon's a slave, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got this kind of sympathy for this enslaved beast doing exactly what the Night's King wants. No autonomy or anything.
Alex M. Super Chat.
Blue Eyes White Viserion versus Red Eyes Black Drogon. I think that's the Yu-Gi-Oh!
That is a Yu-Gi-Oh! joke,
The first part was, I didn't know there was Red Eyes Black Dragon, but...
I think that one he might have just made that one up.
Cool.
What says Red Eyes Black Drogon? Oh, well, it's still the same joke.
Drogon.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, you did. From Gregor the Toasty, Lord of the Bread Fort, George R. R. Martin has said there will be a future Dance of the Dragons. Could a White Walker dragon be what he's talking about? You know, I had never considered that until this last episode, because I always thought it was just a metaphor for, young Griff being a dragon, quote unquote dragon.
Or more than a metaphor, but that there was set up for conflict potentially.
Yeah, so that is a Dance of the Dragons, because the Dance of the Dragons is, it is two Targaryen claimants fighting over the throne, and so, of course, the real Dance of the Dragons had real dragons in it, and so it's always possible that, young Griff gets a dragon. Seems kind of unlikely, but I guess it's possible. Euron stealing a dragon is still possible, and that could be a Dance of the Dragons type situation. But yeah, this could be it. This is another possibility. Dance of like an undead dragon getting into the mix. And again, I said this earlier, but it's possible that we still have Dany's three dragons, that none of them die in the books, at least not early on, and the walkers create a dragon. That ice dragon that we've quoted, these legends of the real ice dragons. It's not a creature that was risen from the dead. It's a creature of ice and snow that melts when it's killed, which sounds like a White Walker, because when they die, they melt, right? So
puddles.
Yeah, puddles. So, but to fully answer that question, yeah, we don't know. We don't know whether it's a White Walker dragon or just a white. I agree that it makes more sense if it's a slave. That's more thematically compelling, and. But we'll see. We'll see.
I'm really can you guys tell me what you think the significance would be of it being a White Walker dragon? Because I can't see what would it be more conscious? It would. I'm not following exactly. Like, I see why people are saying it, but I don't really see what the thematic relevance would be.
Well, it could raise the dead on its own, or it could...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, anyways, I guess that's an answer, though. Or maybe it's, for instance, if the whites weren't, if they actually weren't weak to dragon glass, maybe then it wouldn't be weak to that. Or maybe there's other differences. That is relevant in the show, but...
That's a good point.
I wonder.
Yeah, I suppose they're just going to have to show us what its capabilities are. We just don't know yet. These are good questions, and they're good food for thought. But obviously, these answers are tough to come by at this point. We have a question from Red Ramira Ravenhorn of Skagos. I saw some theories about Viserion, a.k.a. Vice-Arian. Yes, that's my favorite name for him. When the Great Other turns the dead into whites, he doesn't need to touch them. The example was given of Hardhome that he just had to raise his hands to raise the dead. When the Great Other turned Viserion into Vice-Arian, he touched the dragon just like he does to Craster's son. But Craster's son was alive, and this is a dead dragon. So I don't know that really... I don't know that this helps us figure it out.
Yeah, except again, the dragon, you could say that the dragon doesn't just lose all of its life force. Like, there's magic. There's all sorts of things you could say.
That's another thing. You're right. It's a magical beast in the first place. So
I don't know.
Yeah, whereas a baby isn't. Especially Craster's babies. Ew.
But yeah,
I like Ash's idea that it's just simply harder to raise such a beast. So he needed to concentrate a bit more.
Yeah, you need to concentrate and touch it. I think it's totally in line with magic from most things we've all seen. That is natural. So
we had a comment on Monday that said they didn't want to go that route of him just raising, because then it would be like Ice Yoda raising the X-wing out of Dagobah. It would look just like that, and I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, I mean. To be honest, though, like I don't really see why Viserion had to fall into the water. Period. Like, if it added all this stuff with him having chains, having to raise him out, all that, I don't really see why the dragon couldn't have just fallen onto land.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a thought, like that they chose to do that.
I think they maybe did it to I'm totally guessing, but maybe to just for the effect, it's going down into the water is kind of cool.
It's like, the sunken dragon.
Because so people won't it won't immediately implant the idea of them raising it. So like for the casual viewer won't get that idea right away.
Okay. It's a fine answer.
Okay, so let's move on. Wow, time has really flown by here.
I know, we're at almost 3 hours.
So let's talk about questions. Yeah, a lot of we're not going to get to all the questions today at this rate. There's so much to talk about. That's just the way it is. So especially if you had questions about what's coming, send us those again for Saturday, and we'll address a lot of those. We'll have time to think about them more in the meantime as well. But here's another interesting thing. Barrack and Tormund are staying at the Wall, which kind of makes sense. And obviously we wanted Tormund to go south for a lot of cool, fun reasons, but we have them staying here.
We've got a super chat real quick from King Stork 1. Could Uncle Benjen / Cold Hands have ridden on Viserion? Someone else in that Twilight Zone?
Whoa.
That's funny.
Benjen riding Viserion. That would have been cool.
I want the mountain riding. No, I don't. I really don't. But I just
mountain that rides
in terms of undead people.
A dragon. Yeah. In terms of undead, he would be the most terrifying. Like, whoa. He's the only dragon rider who would have a chance at carrying the dragon. Like they could reverse. Like the dragon could ride him and it would still work, right? He's strong enough to... He's strong enough. Oh, come on. I get more of a reaction than that. At least a groan. At least get groaning.
I was busy laughing at the chat, actually.
After 3 hours, Aziz, it's hard to even groan at your puns.
Oh, I had one for Aziz that I thought of last night, which we did not hit on. Surprisingly, I can't believe Viserion. It's pretty much telegraphed that it's going to be him that dies because he's the white dragon.
Yeah.
White dragon.
The joke was there all along.
Groany, groan.
So we talked about Barrack staying at the Wall, but just the fact that he's alive is interesting too. And it makes me think of the book again, even though it's super hard to connect, because you're like, wait, Aziz Barrack has been dead in the book for a while. How could this possibly relate? Well, it relates to the concept of passing the life force on. Barrack passes his life force to Stoneheart, so people are naturally going to ask, is Stoneheart going to pass her life force on to somebody else later? And a candidate for that, this is a bit crackpotty, not because it's a weird idea, but because there's not much really pointing to this. It's just an idea. Well, who's the first character in the show ever to have obsidian? That's the blackfish. The first mention of obsidian in the entire series is the blackfish's little blackfish pendant. And he dresses like a member of the Night's Watch. So I always felt like, early on, I always like played with that idea. Like, is he going to go join the Night's Watch one day because he wears all black? And this obsidian thing didn't occur to me at the time because this is like my first read. But hey, maybe Stoneheart passes her life force on to Blackfish. I mean, that seems kind of far-fetched, but it's an idea. So, you bring up an interesting question here.
I brought it up earlier, but I wanted to go a little more in depth with it. The idea, did Gendry travel with Jon and company south? A couple of points in favor and against it. You know, Gendry seemed to swear himself to Jon Snow, and he's friends with Davos, so it seems like he would go with the people he knows and not just stay at the Wall, especially because there wasn't time for them to maybe give him, you know, those instructions. But we haven't seen Davos either, so maybe they're both there. Maybe Davos is taking him to Winterfell to relay some messages potentially, especially because we have this idea that we mentioned earlier of Clovis going to work at the Winterfell Forges, so maybe that means something. He isn't in the previews, but he would also be likely to stay clear of Cersei, you would imagine. Mm-hmm. So, like, even if he went south, he might stay on the ship or something.
He could just show up and they never say who he is. But I agree, that's a thing. Like, no reason to antagonize Cersei anymore. Yeah.
I'm not sure what I think. I want him to go with Jon and Davos south because I think that makes the most sense. Unless they're going to Winterfell, I really hope he's not just out Eastwatch because then it makes me worry about him being doomed. What about you guys?
I think he needs to make a new hammer. His hammer's gone. He needs to forge a new hammer.
Damn that hammer! I know. Yeah. I want him to go to Winterfell. I think, and I hadn't really thought about Davos. I think it'd be really cool if Gendry and Davos show up at Winterfell at a critical moment, you know, kind of like, what the heck is going on here?
Why are these sisters fighting? What is Littlefinger doing? Or whatever.
They need a little Davos over there.
Yeah. We have
I will get to that in a second. What about you guys? Where do you think he's going? Do you think he's at Eastwatch, Winterfell, or headed south?
I think he's heading south. I think he's going to stay with Jon, although maybe Jon doesn't. Yeah. I think he's going to go south with Jon.
He's going to go south. What about you,
I easily be wrong. I don't have a lot of confidence in that guess.
Yeah.
I think he's sick of landfaring and he's off in his boat again for another few episodes.
I like that call.
Landfaring?
Yeah, landfaring.
Seafaring, landfaring.
I like that. Yeah. So now we got this super chat from Elizabeth Chris again. Thank you. She said, so it couldn't be burned is why the dragon fell in the water. Oh, that's a great call. I thought about that myself, and I when I thought about it, I was like, when would they have time to burn it? Oh, yeah, the dragon could try to burn it. Like, of course. That makes sense.
Yeah, you wonder if they even thought of that. Did it occur to this? Jon, like, on the ship, waking up, like, sad for Daenerys, and then he's like, wait a minute.
We didn't burn
the dragon. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I really want... I feel like he should think about it. They burned Thoros, so I would like him to have that realization so that maybe it isn't just out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
Yeah, out of the blue. I said it. I was like, it's a stretch of a pun. I won't point it out where he went.
So, of course, Sandor going south is another big thing here. Do we have Brienne and Tormund? Do we have... Yeah,
exactly. Tormund. I wanted to bring up Tormund while Jamie's around.
Yeah. Is Sandor going to mention that? It'd be funny.
Get Jamie feeling jealous.
So, Yoke Boy, you have some thoughts here on a very long-standing, exciting theory that has existed in the fandom for so long, and we might finally be getting it, and that is Clegane Bowl. Is it happening? Yeah. Should we get hyped? Let us know.
It's one of those that's been hyped so long. Like, people are kind of tired of it now. Like 2 years ago, everyone would have been going crazy. But people like now, I haven't seen. Well, maybe they are getting excited, but I haven't seen much of it. So I'll give a quick rundown of Clegane Bowl and why people have always been interested in it. I think the roots of Clegane Bowl are down to two things. Okay, number one, the feeling that Sandor has some kind of unfinished business with his brother regarding the face-burning backstory that was, so horrifying. And number two, this vision of Bran in a Game of Thrones. There were shadows all around them. One shadow was dark as ash with the terrible face of a hound. Another was armored like the sun, golden and beautiful. Over them both loomed a giant in armor made of stone. But when he opened his visor, there was nothing inside but darkness and thick black blood. Okay, so people still argue about who this is, but I think the simplest idea is that it's Robert Strong looming over Sandor and Jaime. That's what I think. I think it kind of makes the most sense if you don't kind of overthink it, let's say. So if we see Gregor kill Sandor, I think it might be bad news for Jaime if that looming over is signifying a showdown, let's say. Then if we see Sandor go, woof, we might see Jaime too. That's one thought. I thought, I really hope Sandor doesn't, die, but I find it very difficult to believe he could overcome Gregor, and I'm horrified by the idea that he burns him again or something horrendous. Maybe I'm just a scaremonger.
Ooh, that is scary.
Oh, wait, go back up to the quote. Yeah, it's the face of a hound. Anyways, someone points out, Misty 306, that Sandor's doghound was stolen in the books. Just notably, which I still think it means more about him being the hound. But yeah.
Right, it's the metaphorical.
But it's an interesting point I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, because Lemon Cloak is going to die
I know.
the mountain.
It's pretty weird, but it's
I think it's interesting if Clegane happens, because could we see Robert Strong kind of be unmasked, so to speak? We know that this Gregor is undead, but in the fight, could everybody else? And Jon's here with this zombie that he's brought down, and there's a zombie, fighting with Sandor. Could this be a reveal that kind of really sets the cat amongst the pigeons in King's Landing there?
I will say another good point someone points out. I didn't really look at this part of this vision before. I don't really care about the Game Bowl. But someone points out that the line, another was armored like the sun, golden and beautiful. That sounds a lot like Martell, like Oberyn Martell, in another sense, the sun and spear. It's an interesting thought as well, because it actually did happen. He did have the mountain looming over him. Yeah. So I like that call, but I definitely haven't done any research on this myself. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think the golden armor being Jaime's golden armor.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just
Oberyn's armor
it's just
is
the
golden,
line saying like the sun, but
like the sun is very telling.
It's notable. I wanted to bring it up. Whoever said that.
Yeah.
Valid interpretation, I have to say.
Yeah. I want to say that if this does happen, because I like to give little reeds of hope to people, Sandor is the only person in the story so far who has defeated the mountain in single combat. So, undead, Gregor or not, there's definitely, it's not a given that he'll kill Sandor. In fact, Yolkboy has a little secret crackpot.
Do I?
Do you?
No.
It's written there. You don't want to share your secret crackpot.
Oh, man, it's...
The other side of the face burning was the crackpot, right?
Yeah. No, I already mentioned that.
You said that? I'm sorry.
What if he burns him?
Yeah, the idea of Cersei already having an undead, I don't think this is going to happen, but the idea is funny enough that I want to share it. And they'll be like, here it is. Here's proof, the dead. And Cersei's like, oh yeah, I got one of these right here.
Yeah.
This isn't proof of anything. You can just make this.
Oh, you guys are guys and your little zombie who's so cute.
And you're like, this is all a trick. Cersei will say, this is all a trick. See, we can just make this. They just made this and brought it, and they're trying to lie to everybody. Okay, so let's talk about. We've only got a couple of things left to go. We're definitely not going to get to all the questions we had, so apologize for that in advance. This is already going to be the longest stream of the year. We're almost there already, and we have enough to cover that it's clear we're going to have the longest stream of the year here. So John
Mark went through all that work getting questions, and we're not going to.
Yeah, well, we'll still peruse them and see if any of them have we can bring them up again on Saturday. Yeah. I'm sure some of them we've kind of answered incidentally as we've gone too. That always happens.
Yeah, we've got this scene between Jon and Daenerys, or Dany. Jon's really getting into nicknaming now, I guess.
Yeah, Dany, yeah.
He loves calling Ygritte Iggy and all that. So.
Iggy.
I don't know.
Should just call her Red.
Yeah, Red. I like that. That's good. Hey, Red. But Aziz had me grab these great shots of this parallel between Dany and Drogo and Jon and Dany, and Jon even has some chest wounds.
Yeah. Someone in the chat earlier mentioned that my eyes are up here, Dany, because his abs are showing and everything, and how he was flexing his abs to distract from all his wounds, to draw the eye away from that. As we said, Dany was eventually going to see the wound over his heart and all that. So, well, this wasn't exactly the context we predicted, but it's pretty darn similar. And yeah, that's a pretty stirring image, isn't it? So I guess Dany's learned, get yourself a man with plot armor, because these barbarian warlords don't have it. They don't have any armor. Look at that. He's shirtless, for God's sake.
I hope Dany doesn't break his heart again.
Yeah, right?
Well,
or instead of stabbing his heart, she'll break his heart. So he's kind of now, another history reference, is the new king who knelt, right? He knelt before the dragons. Instead of kneeling before the dragon because how intimidating they are, he knelt before them because she put them at risk to help the North. That seems to be why Jon, took this step. Partly because he's grateful, partly because he feels bad that she lost the dragon, but mostly because she did the thing that he needed her to do, which was to come fight the White Walkers and the army that did. That's the thing that really sold it for him. It's like, she's doing the thing she needs to do. She's ruling like a leader should. She's doing what Stannis did. She's going to save the kingdom to earn the throne. So, but at the same time, it could easily cause a lot of problems for him politically.
Mm-hmm. I thought that his words were in the same way that we thought other scenes between them kind of were going to be almost more of a connection. I felt like his words were just short of some kind of a proposal, because, my queen could have a double meaning, not, my consort queen. So I think he said that, and I was like, oh, did he just? But then he jokes around about kneeling, and, maybe it's significant that he hasn't exactly knelt yet, because there's still kind of hope that they could kind of form a more equal union. So in which, this whole scene, I think, refers back to that talk with Beric about, man's never kneeling. So,
yeah.
At the end of the day, Jon's shown that he's ready to kneel. Whether something else will happen, we'll have to see.
True that.
Yeah. The scene was interesting to me. Emilia Clarke had a bit of a different vibe than she normally does.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with reason. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about her acting here. I think I overall liked the choice for her to be, she's real teary-eyed and upset, but she's smiling through the tears, despite herself, I think, because she's just so relieved about Jon's survival and that she's sitting there with him. So yeah, I think it was good. Yeah, she likes him.
She likes him more now that she saw him shirtless. Heck, I liked him more when I saw him.
I think she likes him more now that she's like, I'm not as worried about you dying.
You just can't seem to be killed. Yeah, what am I worried about?
Look at those chest wounds.
Yeah, he keeps coming back, plus the plot armor. I mean, yeah, this guy he's pretty safe. So, Yoke Boy, how do you think this affects the whole RLJ picture as well?
Yeah, RLJ looms over, doesn't it? Because it's not something that the show are kind of going to veer away from. George has said that it's the central mystery. And, we've talked about how the likelihood of, finding out more about Rhaegar and Lyanna, maybe even in the next episode. So it'll be interesting to see how RLJ is going to, affect this kind of political union that's growing between them, and the dynamic between them, and what will change especially with the knowledge now of the legitimacy.
Right on. Yeah, it seems like they keep dodging even the possibility of marriage. I wonder why, no one's even floated the idea, which is a little odd, but I guess that's just, they want to hide that possibility from casual showrunners, I guess.
Pretty strongly at it to me when she said, I can't have children. Do you understand me? I think she was telling him there, are you okay with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that was very significant as well. Yeah. Which goes back to the Jon and Jorah thing about him having children. Or very true. Whether he would.
Very true. So.
On worry of the week now.
Yeah. So do you guys have any worries of the week? I mean,
Yara.
it's all Yara.
It's been Yara for me for weeks. I feel like it's always Yara. No, I'm also worried about whoever is up at Eastwatch. I don't know who's still there except for Tormund and Beric, but I am worried about the Eastwatch crew.
Well, we have someone in the chat just spoiling all kinds of things. First he said, spoiler alert, Winterfell is in the north. And then he said, spoiler alert, Dorne has sand. So, guys, watch out. Big spoilers are dropping.
Spoilers in the chat.
There's no point. I was going to pick up the books that everyone's talking about. There's no point now, is there?
Dorne has sand? Outrageous. But so I guess, Yokeboy, you'd be a little worried about Sandor, wouldn't you, based on your earlier comments?
Yeah, I guess I'd be worried about Sandor for sure. You know, in that proximity to not only Gregor but monstrous undead Gregor. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I've got my reeds of hope.
Your reeds of hope?
As usual.
You think Mira's pretty safe still?
Yeah.
Lady Gwyn still has reeds of hope for Ned Stark, so I wouldn't listen to her.
Oh man.
Reaper's still alive too.
Yeah. So there's one more like really old trailer shot from not even from this season. So this isn't a spoiler. It's not even a trailer shot. It was in a trailer shot, but it was also in Dany's House of the Undying vision, right? Or no, it was one of Bran's visions, or was it in both? Bran's vision, and that is that dragon shadow over King's Landing. All that time we were like, oh, it's a big. It might just be this. It might just be a dragon flying over King's Landing as part of this armistice, you know. But it could be the White Walker dragon, which is like, whoa. So both we run the range there of the most ordinary, mundane theory. Okay, Dany shows up for the armistice. Of course, there's a dragon over King's Landing, and then here we go to this. Oh, but it could also be the Night King riding an undead dragon, which is the most like outrageous, but not so outrageous now sounding idea. So really wide range of possibilities there. And again, like Yokeboy said earlier, Dany's visions indicate King's Landing is toast. Maybe not through fire, maybe not through who knows, but toast. I mean, that is that she sees in her vision a gigantic hole in the throne room, in the ceiling. That's gotta happen. That can't just be, that doesn't seem metaphorical, It might, and even if it is metaphorical, it's still gotta happen in some form or fashion, that the Iron Throne is not a thing anymore, or King's Landing is, blown up or frozen or something.
It's interesting because...
Go ahead.
Just part of that vision was her, after that she goes beyond the wall, and that's where she sees her husband and son, which is presented in her vision as Drogo and...
Rhaego.
Sorry.
Now we could be getting metaphorical, right?
So could we be getting metaphorical in that she goes behind the wall and finds her husband?
Oh, very nice, very nice. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
So, do you guys have any other ideas on what Cersei might be planning here? This is maybe our last question of the day.
My lips are sealed.
She has a
okay, I'll take a stab in the dark. Just what the hell? What if the Euron's fleet are loaded up with wildfire and they attack, kind of a flanking attack, like I said, and the main players are distracted, something like that. I think you know what I'm getting at. Some kind of ambush like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely most suspicious of Euron's ships. I'll say I know some of what I'll say I know a lot of what she's doing, but I don't know everything because I try to skim it, and so I don't know what they're doing there. Exactly. I'm suspicious.
Yeah. One point here I want to bring up from a patron that wondered why Tyrion didn't insist on a neutral location like Harrenhal or something. Well, partly because I think Cersei might not agree to it if they do something like that. Also because it would ruin Cersei's continuity of having only been one other place.
Harrenhal would not be a good choice for that because of what happened at Harrenhal before. It would definitely put anyone's hackles up in terms of dragons coming there. But the point remains, it's just a funny idea.
If it did happen at Harrenhal, people would be even more like, vision of Tyrion at Harrenhal's coming. We could have the parallel locations.
That's funny. That would be very funny, actually.
But alas, that does not seem to be the case. So anyway, folks, I told a lot of people we'd be answering their questions today that we're not going to answer because we are really well over time here. It's
we're
late over there in
hours
England
already,
for Yoke
yeah.
Boy.
It's late here. Before we go, could I just say that we've got a new episode of Radio Westeros. It's War of the Five Kings, and we've got like a week-long patron privilege. You'll have to check it out because it is kind of staggered. But if you want to hear it before public release, then check out our patron.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to become a Radio Westeros patron, you get that episode now or in a few days, depending on what level you choose. And if not, well, it'll come out the same day as this next review next week. So there'll be a lot of great fun for y'all to dive into, book and show. So that should be a great. I'll certainly be listening to that episode really soon because it's War of Five Kings. It's particularly a topic I'm particularly excited about. I love I just love all the topics you guys choose, but that one I'm particularly partial to because it involves so many different characters and topics and things. It's a big topic. I love big topics.
Big, yes.
Yeah, I bet. How long is this one?
Okay, it's going to be 3 parts. We're looking at like the first one is 2.5 hours, right, Lady Gwyn?
Yeah, 2.5. So we're looking at upwards of 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 8 hours or so. And it, yeah, and we started out doing this months and months ago, and we ended up doing our episodes on Joffrey and Renly is kind of just to move some of the information off.
Oh yeah.
Into character episodes. So
it happens. Tackle a subject and it grows. It always happens. That's the way these things work. Yeah.
If you count the Rob episodes, this has been our entire year.
That's great. Okay, well, that takes care of our thanks for Radio Westeros. Really appreciate you guys coming back again and sticking with us for so long.
3 hours.
Yoke Boy especially staying up so late.
He was up early working on the document too.
That's right. Yeah, early/late. It's like Iceland where this show is filmed. You can't tell what time it is. And...
Right.
Sooner or later, you're going to twig that I don't sleep.
All just rolls into one.
Lady Gwyn is my White Walker. I'm just a white. So
well, you're the one from England, which is shaped like Westeros, or rather, Westeros is shaped like England.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going show perspective first. That's like my real-world Dragonglass comment.
Yeah, exactly.
England is just Westeros.
Just Westeros, a little bit smaller.
So
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, England, the size of South America.
So thanks also to Michael Klarfeld for the video intro and for these awesome maps behind us. Thanks to Joey Townsend and Jesse Kowal for our music. Thanks to Shea for doing production stuff while participating in the episode, wearing multiple hats and none at the same time.
Wearing headphones and dropping the keyboard and mouse.
Yeah,
I dropped both the keyboard and the mouse, but the mouse was far more, of a disaster because the mouse ball came out and the battery came out, and I had to I tried to pick up the ball with my feet and it didn't work. Anyways, it was a catastrophe, but without cats.
That same guy spoiling things just said, spoiler alert, this was a good show. Uh-huh. He's talking about this review, not Sunday's episode.
Obviously.
Oh, thank you. Obviously.
Or that's just my headcanon, getting in the way again. Yeah. And people are asking where our cats are. I don't know. They were fighting. 2 of them were fighting during this episode.
One's sleeping in a Jake and the cat. We got him a big cat tower, and he's sleeping on the top level apartment. So.
Thanks also to our many patrons, as well as Radio Westeros' patrons, who make this all very much possible. We would not be able to make nearly as many episodes or go 3 hours in streams or, it's because of everything. So many of these things are possible because of Patreon, so we're very thankful. First off, the mysterious BR, Hand to the King.
What? Oh, and next up, Lord Michael Valerian, Knight of High Tide and Guardian of the DeLorean, Hand of the Queen.
And Lady Suzanne Sinistral, the learned, holder of the left-handed Valyrian shears called Penance and Hand of the Beard. I mistakenly said she was the manager of a band called Longclaw. Well, she does photography and some other managerial type duties for them. She's not the actual manager. I'll make my correction there, but still awesome to be involved with the Game of Thrones named band. Thanks to Sir Valentin of House to Jen, creator of the Game of Predictions, which is a free Game of Thrones predictions/futures market. Good times. Thanks to Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire and Warden of the West. I see he has a new episode of his podcast, To Wage War, out, so check that out. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning is Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Quebeth the Unfrozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs and Warden of the South. Lord Osborne of Castle Werewoods is spreading the old gods by planting werewood saplings in the Reach, Stormlands, and Crownlands. Our roots run deep. Lord James Tuttle is King of the Stepstones in the Narrow Sea, commander of the Royal Fleet consisting of the Narrow Fleet, led by flagship Caraxes, and the Bloodstone Fleet, led by flagship Prince Daemon. Our small council consists of Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers, Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows, Cinder of the Citadel, Lord Robert Jacobs, Master of Coin, and Rosie the Clever, Master of Laws.
And our Queen's High Council consists of Lady Jane of House Celtigar, the Emerald of the Evening, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Axe Painkiller, Mistress of Sea Eagles, and Mistress of Ships. Lady Mai of House Swan, Mistress of Whisperers. Elia of Upstate, Master of Coin. Grand Maester Elizabeth, middle daughter of Lyanna Mormont, First Lady to forge both the Silver and Valyrian Steel Link, and Lady E.S., Master of Laws.
Right on. Our King's Justice is Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steelblade Fate. Our Council of the Beard is led by Grand Maester Clark, protector of wisdom and beards, and beard wisdom. Our lords and ladies in their castles include Lady Direliz of Castle Nyaki, the alpha patron to both our show and Radio Westeros's, and LML's show, Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire, truly earning the name the alpha patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Veldt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete, Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold. Lord Bemmy Snuggle Bunny is guardian of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood and holder of the Vorpal Snuggle Bunny. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroot is sworn alesmith to House Stark, Grand Master of the Zithomancer's Guild, and Keeper of the Buzz. Brian the Defender is Lord of the Spear Fort and the Freelands, last scion of Clan McCulloch, Strength and Courage. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is First Forester of the Old Gods, sworn to House Ironwerewood, motto, listen for the silence. Connor the Dungeon Master is Lord of Catamount Keep and Guardian of the Smoky Mountain Pass. Our King's Guard is commanded by Lord Commander Sir Christopher Dane of Starfall, Sentinel of the Torrentine.
The Queen's Guard, the Lord Commander of the Queen's Guard is Lord Captain Commander Haema Helmont, the Sellsword Sentinel. And the Queen's Guard is rounded out by Lady Nymeria of House Seapurtle, Alexander of House Atreides from the Seat of Dune, I Must Not Fear, Fear is the Mind Killer, Jane Grey, Lady Esk of the Tattered Spire, First Sword of Albion, Brian, the Pest of Hyrule, and Becca the Bard, Songbird of the North.
Also, in the Beard Guard, we have led by Lord Commander George the Golden, backed up by Sir Joshua Oakhart, the White Oak, and Lady Rita of the Coppermane, the Unbound. Motto, Dance the Fervor.
That's great.
Yeah, Dance the Fervor is really good.
Perfect for Sean.
It is perfect for Sean, although when he first saw it, he misread it and said, Dance the Fever, and I had to correct him, and Dance the Fervor. They're both good, though. Dance the Fever, Dance the Fervor, it works. Also, thanks to Lord Commander Daenerys Flint of the Night Fort, avenging the memory of brave Dany. First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield. First Builder Patchface of Motley Wisdom. First Steward Sir Jurian of the Torrentine, called Palewind. And a couple other shout-outs to round things out. We have Sir Justin Silvershores, Knight of the Borders. We have, there was a really good one I wanted to grab, and I forgot to grab it. I got to find it really fast here. Where is he? Oh, man, I'll have to give him a shout-out next time because I just can't find it. It's so many good names in here. I lose track sometimes. Really growing quite the large army. Galby of Serwyn is the Pale Blade. Lady Andrea Blackstone of Relay is Mistress of Tides. Lincoln Naranha is the Hedge Knight from Sothorios, known as the Anaconda Knight, and he don't want none.
Yeah, I was about to say that. That's so funny.
There it is. Rashilo Redblade, called Maiden Guard, is the one I was looking for. Longtime supporter there. I wanted to get that one in there. And along the lines of the Relay shout-out that I just gave, we have Sir Matthew, the Black Pharaoh of House Relay. The Blackstone calls to us. Those are H.P. Lovecraft references, and I am wearing an H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu shirt today, a Game of Thrones H.P. Lovecraft crossover shirt.
It says Cthulhu is coming on his shirt, and then it has it crossed out. It says "is here" in like bloody red.
And it's got the Stark colors, of course. All right, so that does it for the shout-outs today. Thank you very much, everybody, for staying with us for this very long stream. There was a lot to say, as always. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Thanks to everyone who hit like on the video. Thanks to everyone in general. We'll see you all next time for the finale. Until then, Valar reread us, Valar rewatch us, and Valar no leak us.